A young boy introduces himself as Cyril to Lady Sophia. She questions the name Cyril as he respectfully addresses her as my lady. Cyril reveals his true purpose as an apprentice butler is to ensure he can prevent Lady Sophia from meeting her grim execution ending. He explains that he has been reincarnated into the world of an otome game he once played called the Espressivo of Light and Darkness. She is 6-year-old Sophia Rosenberg, the daughter of a marquis and the prince's fiancée, while Cyril recalls his past life in a technologically superior world where he studied magic. Cyril knows that at age 16, the prince will fall for the game's main heroine, which will cause Sophia to be consumed by darkness. Her intense jealousy drives her to harass the heroine, which eventually leads to her being discovered by the prince and executed alongside her butler accomplice for her villainous actions. Cyril possesses this knowledge because his sister in his previous life was an avid gamer who had forced him to play this specific otome game. He then reveals with grim determination that the butler who is executed alongside her, none other than himself, and he is resolved to do whatever it takes to prevent this future. Cyril thinks that avoiding his execution would be simple, but there is a real challenge. He admits that Sophia is his favorite character from the game because beneath her villainous role, she has a kind heart, and her tragic backstory, which involves being harassed by maids, was designed to make players sympathize with her. He therefore decides he must also save her from her tragic fate and bows with a renewed sense of purpose. To save her, he must first prevent her personality from becoming twisted by removing the source of her suffering, and he also needs to enhance her charm so the prince won't be swayed by the main heroine. Cyril knows there is another major obstacle to overcome later, but for now his priority is to gain Sophia's trust and guide her away from her dark destiny as quickly as possible, since in the original story, he only becomes her butler at age 15, which would be too late. By combining his game knowledge with his natural talents, he managed to prove his exceptional abilities and earn the position of her apprentice butler at the young age of 6. A curious Sophia asks what a butler is, and Cyril explains it is someone who does everything for you and is always there for you. Sophia then asks if he will always be there for her, and Cyril kneels and solemnly promises that he always will. On Sophia's birthday, Cyril reassures her that he will always be by her side to protect her at any time and any place before she shyly asks if he will celebrate with her. Cyril smiles warmly and promises to celebrate her birthday this year, next year, and every year that follows while he straightens his suit. He presents a single perfect rose to Lady Sophia as he wishes her a happy 6th birthday. Sophia beams with genuine happiness as she accepts the rose and thanks him, and Cyril feels he has succeeded in winning her trust, although he knows this is only the first step in changing her fate. He realizes his next critical task is to get rid of the maid who constantly harasses Sophia, which has caused her to become isolated and disliked by the other staff in the mansion. A distraught and tearful Sophia runs to Cyril claiming that the head maid was being mean to her again, while he comforts her and gently offers to wipe away her tears. The maid quickly denies the accusation, insisting that Sophia simply tripped and fell, while accusing the young lady of lying as other maids whisper about Sophia's supposed dishonesty. The head maid's expression turns sinister as she scolds Sophia for telling lies, leaving the young girl looking shocked and insisting she is telling the truth. Cyril steps protectively in front of Sophia and sternly warns the maid that a servant of the Rosenberg house should never betray their master. The maid dismisses Cyril's intervention, claiming Sophia is merely throwing a tantrum, but Cyril retorts that it's obvious the maid is taking out her own frustrations on the innocent child by cornering her with lies. The maid scoffs, confidently asking who would believe a young boy over a long-serving trusted maid, and smugly declares that the answer is obvious. Cyril calmly replies that the question of who is more trusted is irrelevant, because what truly matters is that a servant who betrays their master is unforgivable. Guards suddenly appear and apprehend the bewildered maid, who cries out in shock and demands to know what is happening. Cyril produces an official-looking letter revealing that he and the head butler Cedric have investigated her and found her guilty of embezzlement. The maid is stunned by the accusation of embezzlement, but Cyril tells her it is useless to pretend ignorance because he knows she has been inflating the costs of household supplies. He coldly informs the terrified maid that she will now spend the rest of her life as a criminal slave, as she weakly protests that it was only for a small amount. Cyril mockingly questions her definition of a small amount, suggesting her sense of numbers is quite peculiar. He then holds up a document as proof, and adds that she also damaged the young lady's reputation by branding her as a liar. He asks her if she still thinks she is more trustworthy than him or the young lady after it has been revealed that she was deceiving everyone and stealing from the household. With a serious expression, Cyril declares that she has betrayed her master's trust in the most fundamental way. The maid's face fills with despair as Cyril announces that her time at the mansion is over. Cyril turns to Sophia and gently reassures her that everything is all right now because the mean maid is gone for good. Overwhelmed with relief, Sophia throws her arms around Cyril in a tight hug. Through tears of gratitude, Sophia thanks Cyril for believing her and always being on her side, and he calmly replies that it was a given. From that day forward, Cyril dedicated himself to raising Sophia to be a dignified lady of the Rosenberg Marquis family, teaching her everything from posture and dance to violin and embroidery. He even taught her magic from his past life and self-defense, and she absorbed all of his teachings without complaint over the next 6 years. Now a graceful young lady, Sophia asks Cyril to brush her hair for her. As he prepares her hairbrush, Cyril notes that her 12th birthday is approaching, and Sophia wonders if her busy parents will be able to celebrate with her. Sophia reassures herself that it is all right if her parents are busy because she has their gifts and messages, and more importantly, she has Cyril by her side. Cyril reflects that the lonely, isolated girl from the game no longer exists, and he tells Sophia that the entire mansion staff joins him in wishing her a happy birthday. Sophia blushes and confesses that having him celebrate with her is what makes her the happiest, and Cyril replies that the pleasure is all his. As he leaves her room for the night, Cyril feels confident that he has prevented her from falling into darkness and has given her the charm to captivate the prince, but he knows one final challenge remains. That challenge is the first prince's upcoming birthday party, where Sophia is fated to meet the second prince, just as he falls in love with the main heroine. In the original story, the second prince saves the heroine from an aggressive nobleman at the party, and though they don't learn each other's identities, they feel a connection that deepens when they meet again at the academy. With a fierce look of determination, Cyril vows to completely destroy any chance of that fateful meeting from ever taking place. Standing in the magnificent ballroom, he knows this is the critical moment to secure Sophia's future and ensure the prince is never stolen from her. Sophia, now 12 and dressed in a beautiful gown, asks Cyril why he is walking behind her, reminding him that as her escort he should be walking proudly by her side. Cyril is taken aback by her request, realizing it's highly unconventional for a commoner butler to serve as a noble lady's escort, which is a role usually reserved for family or a fiancé. He notices her anxious expression and deduces that she chose him because she doesn't trust anyone else and feels safer with him by her side. Sophia interrupts his thoughts by turning to him and asking if she looks beautiful. Cyril assures her she is captivatingly beautiful, while Sophia thinks to herself that as long as he sees her that way, no one else's opinion matters. She then asks if he too finds her beautiful, and he confirms with a smile that he has also fallen under her spell, admiring how much she has grown. Nearby guests whisper in admiration about the Marquis daughter, praising her beauty, intelligence, and mature demeanor. Cyril smiles, feeling a sense of accomplishment that their grand entrance was a success, just as a young man with white hair politely asks to pass. Both Cyril and Sophia are surprised to see it is the second Prince Alforth, who is trying to conceal his identity by introducing himself simply as Al. Sophia gracefully curtsies and introduces herself as being from the Rosenberg household. Cyril watches them with pride, thinking that his 6 years of dedicated effort have all led to this moment where Sophia's first love can finally begin. The prince then asks Sophia for a dance, throwing Cyril into a silent panic, since she is supposed to dance with her escort first, but refusing a prince could damage her reputation. Sophia glances at Cyril for guidance, and he gives her a subtle nod of encouragement, so she decides to accept. She claims she will dance with the prince for one song, and assures Cyril she will return shortly. As they head to the dance floor, Sophia politely tells Sir Al that she looks forward to the dance, and he nervously agrees. Onlookers admire the stunning couple at the center of the ballroom, commenting on their beauty and wondering about the identity of her handsome partner. The two of them dance together gracefully under the admiring gazes of the crowd, while Sophia blushes as she looks at the handsome prince. Cyril watches from a distance as Sophia and the prince dance together, feeling a sense of accomplishment that the villainess who was fated for execution no longer exists. As Sophia happily dances with the prince, Cyril considers his main objective fulfilled, but he then notices a nobleman bothering another young woman and realizes there is still one more thing he needs to do. Cyril observes the situation and reflects that because he successfully changed his lady's fate, he has also spared himself from his own inevitable execution. He steps in to intervene as a nobleman tries to persuade a young woman to leave the party with him, and Cyril firmly tells the man to stop because she is clearly uncomfortable. The nobleman becomes angry and asks what gives Cyril the right to speak to him, that way demanding to know if he was aware that he is the son of Count Reed. Cyril calmly threatens to report the nobleman's behavior directly to his father, which immediately silences the man, who walks away in frustration, while Cyril turns to check on the young lady. The girl he rescued is Alicia, the heroine of the Otome game, and Cyril realizes that because he successfully diverted the prince's attention to Sophia, he inadvertently took the prince's place in this key scene. Alicia stammers her thanks, and Cyril checks to see if she is all right, thinking to himself that he couldn't just leave her because he would feel guilty if she ended up turning to the dark side. The young woman shyly introduces herself as Alicia, the daughter of Lindbergh. Alicia then looks at him with wide, curious eyes and sweetly asks him for his name. Cyril is stunned by her question because he remembers from the game that she and the prince were supposed to part ways without ever learning each other's names. He introduces himself as just Cyril, a butler, hoping to downplay his role, but Alicia seems intrigued by his name. Alicia quickly reassures him that his being a butler doesn't bother her at all since her own family is not from the high nobility, while Cyril apologizes for making her feel awkward. She then explains that she doesn't know anyone else at the party and shyly asks if he would be willing to dance with her. Cyril is surprised by her request because in the original game the heroine's first dance doesn't happen until much later, and it's unusual for a noble's daughter to have never danced before. He knows that a woman asking a man to dance is frowned upon in their society, but he can't bring himself to refuse and embarrass her, so he reluctantly agrees to her request. They begin to dance together, drawing the curious gaze of a nearby nobleman and his smiling companion. Cyril maintains a polite smile, but is internally bewildered by the unexpected turn of events. Alicia proves to be quite clumsy and accidentally stomps hard on his foot, but he reassures her that it is okay as she apologizes profusely. She continues to apologize over and over as they stumble through the dance moves, clearly embarrassed by her mistake. To calm her down, Cyril suggests she take a deep breath and then tries to distract her by asking about her family's territory. Alicia's face instantly brightens as she describes her homeland as a beautiful and wonderful place with vast fields of flowers. Cyril feels his heart flutter and tells her that she looks even more wonderful when she smiles, which makes her blush shyly and thank him. As the musicians play, Alicia wonders aloud with genuine concern if the prince also had his feet stepped on during their dance. The music ends with a final flourish, and as the other couples applaud, Cyril gives Alicia a polite bow. Alicia thanks him for the dance, and he responds in kind just as a voice from behind them says, "I finally found you." A breathless Sophia appears looking distressed, and Cyril is surprised, telling her she didn't need to search for him. She sternly reminds him that she had asked him to wait for her and questions why he didn't follow her simple instruction. Cyril immediately kneels to apologize, thinking she is upset about her dance with the prince, and assumes from her aggressive tone that His Highness must have stepped on her feet. Sophia glares down at him with an intense, unsettling expression and angrily demands to know why he won't look at her. Cyril freezes in shock as he realizes her words are the exact same ones she speaks to the prince in the game just before her descent into darkness, but now they are aimed directly at him. A horrifying thought crosses his mind as he wonders if he has somehow managed to steal the prince's role in this twisted story. With a pained expression, Sophia asks him to tell her it's just her imagination and reminds him of his promise to always stay by her side. Her jealousy erupts as she asks if the girl he was dancing with is better than her, and Cyril frantically tries to explain that he was only helping Alicia out of a difficult situation. Alicia confirms his story, but Sophia only latches onto the idea that Cyril is a kind boy, which sends a wave of panic through him as he realizes his worst fears are coming true. Sophia looks at him with a possessive glint in her eye and says she would prefer he reserve his kindness only for her, causing Cyril to choke in disbelief. He now understands without a doubt that Sophia has developed romantic feelings for him, a love that is doomed by their difference in social status. The dark side flag he thought he had destroyed has reappeared with a vengeance as he sees Sophia is now intensely jealous of the heroine. Cyril tries to take a deep breath and calmly assess the chaotic situation he has created. He briefly thinks that even if she turns to the dark side, she is skilled enough to eliminate her target without getting caught. Then the terrifying reality of his situation hits him like a ton of bricks as he realizes that since the heroine would never fall for him, he is the one who will be annihilated by Sophia's jealousy. He frantically recalls that in all the games routes Sophia becomes jealous and commits evil acts no matter who the love interest is, which means she will inevitably turn to the dark side. He understands with dawning horror that by taking the prince's place he has made himself the sole target of her rage. The story ends with Cyril looking utterly terrified as he realizes he is the only one who will be eliminated. Cyril reflects on his reincarnation into the world of a popular Otan game called the Espressivo of Light and Darkness, where he was reborn as the butler to the story's villainess. He recalls how he used his knowledge of the game to prevent the various flags that would lead Lady Sophia to her execution, which was originally set in motion after she and the prince fell in love at a party. Despite his best efforts to steer events correctly, the party ended with the heroine Alicia asking him for a dance, while a shocked Sophia demanded to know why he wasn't looking at her. Cyril wonders with a grimace how things went so wrong and why Sophia became so focused on him instead of the prince as he stands outside the Grand Rosenberg mansion. He politely knocks and enters a study to meet with Sophia's father. Inside the study, Grieve, the stern head of the Rosenberg family, is busy writing at his desk. Grieve asks Cyril why he waited to interrupt since he knew he was there, and Cyril respectfully explains that he saw his master glance his way and knew his presence was already acknowledged. Grieve seems impressed by the boy's sharp perception, attributing it to his training as a personal butler since the age of 6 before getting down to business regarding the events of the party. Grieve clarifies that he wishes to discuss Cyril's role as Sophia's escort, making the young butler visibly nervous. Grieve offers his thanks for Cyril's service, but Cyril humbly declines any reward, insisting that he failed in his duties because Sophia had to leave the party prematurely. Cyril takes the blame for the incident, explaining that his actions caused Sophia to feel unwell and ultimately brought disgrace upon her. Grieve casually dismisses his concerns, saying that many of the other children also left early and that her departure was not a problem. In fact, Grieve explains that her leaving was the right decision because her dance with the second prince was drawing far too much attention from the other guests. When Cyril asks why this was an issue, Grieve passionately exclaims with fatherly pride that it was because his beautiful daughter was dancing with the grace of an angel. The proud father continues to excitedly repeat the word angel, completely lost in his admiration for his daughter. Cyril states that he is relieved to hear Sophia's reputation remains intact, but he still feels he failed his duties as her escort. Grieve looks at Cyril with a thoughtful expression and remarks that his maturity sometimes makes him question if he is truly just a child. Moving on to a more serious topic, Grieve asks Cyril for his impression of the second prince. Cyril is caught off guard, realizing the question is more than just a simple inquiry about the prince's fascination with Sophia's beauty. Grieve admits he is considering a potential betrothal between Sophia and the second prince and wants to hear Cyril's opinion to help him decide. Cyril feels it is not his place to comment, but Grieve insists that his input will be valuable for his final decision. Cyril is torn between his original plan to unite Sophia and the prince and his new awareness of Sophia's feelings for him, which he cannot bear to betray. He reminds himself that his primary role is that of an apprentice personal butler. With renewed conviction, he tells Grieve that his duty is to lead Sophia to happiness, and therefore her own feelings on a potential marriage should be the first thing to be considered. Grieve lets out an intrigued whom clearly surprised by the young butler's bold response. He questions the idea of asking his daughter's opinion on a strategic marriage, and Cyril firmly states that his only wish is for his lady's happiness. Grieve smirks and calls the answer utterly dull, yet a faint magical glow emanates from his hand. In an unexpected turn of events, Grieve declares that Cyril has passed his test and officially appoints him as a full-fledged personal butler. Cyril is momentarily stunned before humbly kneeling to accept the promotion. Grieve explains that it was a test of his character, and now he feels he can entrust his daughter to Cyril's care before presenting him with an entrance notice to Lawn Bell Royal Academy so he can accompany Sophia. Cyril accepts the papers without hesitation, declaring that he will become a student to remain by his lady's side because he is her personal butler. Sometime later, Cyril helps Sophia study for her exams, praising her for correctly applying a complex formula. He knows that while passing the exam will be easy for her, she must achieve the highest scores to uphold her family's honor. Cyril reflects that he has no time to celebrate his promotion because the real challenges begin at the academy, where he must guide Sophia's path to happiness by steering her back towards he knows the academy is the perfect place to correct their course, but he must remain vigilant about one particular threat. He understands that the presence of the heroine Alicia will only accelerate the rise of Sophia's dark flags. Thankfully, he recalls a side story from the game that explains Alicia joins the academy later, so she will not be in the junior division. Sophia snaps him out of his thoughts and playfully asks if he is the one who is nervous about the upcoming exams. He jests in reply, and she teases him back, suggesting that he is the one on shaky ground, which makes him realize she is no longer bothered by the events of the party. As they head to the academy, Cyril knows the next 3 years will be crucial in setting things right. On the day of the entrance exam, they arrive at the magnificent Landbell Royal Academy. Cyril tells Sophia he needs to check the seating arrangements, and she eagerly asks to join him. He insists she wait with her maid Rush for safety reasons, and then hurries off into the crowded building. As he makes his way through the throng of people, he finds their assigned classroom at the far end of the hall. While navigating the crowd, he accidentally bumps into a young maid and quickly apologizes. The maid politely insists it was her fault, and after confirming neither is hurt, she excuses herself to return to her mistress. Cyril returns to Sophia and Rush, and from a distance he sees the same maid he bumped into now speaking with Alicia, who is being congratulated for convincing her parents to let her attend. Alicia smiles with quiet determination, saying that this was something she could not give up on. Cyril informs Sophia that they will be in the same classroom for the test, and she immediately asks him with a hint of suspicion about the girl he was looking at earlier. A flustered Cyril tries to dismiss her concern by saying it was just a harmless maid, but Sophia clenches her fists, showing that his answer did not reassure her at all. Cyril watches her with concern, thinking that he may have made her too anxious since she is not accustomed to being in such public settings. He then promises her that there is no need to worry because he will always be there to protect her, and she asks him to confirm if he will truly always be by her side. Cyril gently takes her hand and reaffirms his promise to always protect her no matter what happens, just as he did when they were younger. Sophia looks at him with complete trust as she holds his hand tightly and declares that she will never forget his promise. Now feeling much more secure, Sophia thanks him with a warm smile and suggests they should head into the classroom for the exam. Inside the classroom, they are met with a scene of noisy confusion as nobles and commoners are mixed together, asking each other questions about the unfamiliar rules. Sophia and her maid Rush are both surprised by the arrangement, with Rush remarking that it's a very rare sight to see the social classes integrated like this. Cyril observes that the Academy's rule against flaunting social status appears to be strictly enforced right from the entrance exam. He internally reflects that even with such rules in place, one always has to decide whether to treat someone as an equal or assert their own status, just as other students begin to notice Sophia's presence. The other students are buzzing with excitement and nervousness about being in the same school as Lady Sophia, and Cyril proudly notes that she has already earned their respect, just as the exam is about to begin. With a soft blush and a sly smile, Sophia confesses to Cyril that it has always been her dream to spend her life at the academy with him. Cyril is completely stunned by her heartfelt confession, and the paper in his hand crumbles as he stares at her in disbelief. He tries to regain his composure by jokingly reminding her that it's not the time for such things as they are about to take an exam, but she just smiles playfully at his reaction. Their conversation is interrupted by another student who recognizes Sophia as the daughter of Marquis Rosenberg. The boy rudely confronts them, demanding to know who they are, and stating that he will not tolerate their discourtesy. Cyril instinctively moves to intervene, but Sophia calmly stops him and reminds him of the Academy's rules, implying that he has done nothing wrong. With a subtle wink, she explains to Cyril that for two people to truly be on equal ground, the person of higher status must first grant their approval, which leaves her maid Rush amazed by their sophisticated exchange. Sophia turns to the boy and coolly asks for his name and his business with her, and he confidently introduces himself as Raymond. In a shocking announcement, Raymond declares his bold intention to become her personal butler right here and now. Sophia glances thoughtfully at Cyril, her current personal butler, before telling Raymond that she is not in a position to make such a decision. Raymond quickly clarifies that he wishes to be appointed as her personal butler specifically for their time at the academy. Cyril explains to a curious Sophia that students in the servant courses often serve noble students as part of their curriculum. Raymond confidently states that he understands her position and then proposes a challenge. Sophia firmly cuts him off, declaring with unwavering loyalty that Cyril is the only personal butler she will ever need. Raymond recognizes Cyril's name, having heard rumors of the exceptionally talented butler who began serving at the age of 6, and Sophia proudly confirms that he is indeed her most exceptional butler. He scoffs at the idea that a sheltered boy like Cyril could be better than him and vows to prove his own superiority during the entrance exam. Raymond then formally requests that if he proves himself to be superior, she must appoint him as her new personal butler. Sophia calmly agrees to his challenge, stating that she will appoint him as her butler if she deems him to be better for the job, which makes him grin triumphantly. Raymond gives Cyril a smug and challenging look as they prepare to take their seats for the exam. As he walks past Cyril, he confidently states that he will use this exam to prove once and for all that he is the one most fit to be her personal butler. Rausch whispers her concern to Sophia about the promise she just made, but Cyril advises her to consider the exact words his lady used. Cyril explains to the maid that Sophia's promise was cleverly worded to be based on her own subjective opinion of who is better, not simply on the test results, meaning she was never in any danger of having to replace him. Sophia admits with a pout that listening to Raymond belittle Cyril has thoroughly soured her mood. Cyril agrees that he also found it quite irritating that Raymond would imply she is a poor judge of character, and Sophia tells him that it is now up to him to prove how wrong he is. With a dazzling and confident smile, Sophia commands Cyril to show Raymond and the entire academy that her butler is the best in the world, and he accepts her challenge with a determined grin. The maid Rausch is shocked by Sophia's command, realizing it means Cyril must score incredibly high on the entrance exam to prove his greatness to the entire academy. Sophia wonders aloud if that's even possible for him, but Cyril confidently reassures her that it is while internally reflecting that his knowledge from a past life's magic academy makes the written test easy. Cyril explains that the student with the highest exam score becomes the new student representative, and if he performs at his best, he might take that position from her. With a charming smile, Sophia tells him she has no interest in a position given out of pity and encourages him not to hold back. An announcer declares that the exam will begin in 10 minutes, and as Sophia urges Cyril to go, she looks ready for the challenge ahead. Cyril understands that while his wishes for his lady to take the top spot, her true desire is for him to perform at his absolute best, so he instructs a supportive Rausch to wait for them outside. As they sit down for the written portion of the exam, Cyril realizes that if he intentionally holds back to let Sophia win, it would go against her wishes. With a determined smile, the exam begins, and Cyril picks up his pen, ready to face the challenge she has set for him. Later during the practical violin exam, Sophia introduces herself as examinee number 16 and gives Cyril a playful, challenging glance before she begins. She plays the violin with beautiful and effortless skill, her serene expression reflecting her complete mastery of the instrument. As she finishes her performance with a graceful flourish, she politely thanks the examiners for their time. The examiners applaud enthusiastically, and Cyril rushes over to congratulate her by playfully ruffling her hair. She winks and tells him he doesn't need to take care of her during the exam, but he reaffirms his unwavering loyalty as her exclusive butler. When examinee number 17 is called, Cyril borrows a violin from another student, certain he will score perfectly on the written exam to make up for any shortcomings here. Cyril introduces himself to the examiners and takes his place, knowing that the violin test will be his most difficult challenge. He begins to play for the stern-faced examiners. He internally admits that despite having the technical skills down, he completely lacks any natural musical talent. His performance is clearly inferior to Sophia's, producing screeching sounds that make the examiners wince in disapproval. Suddenly, one of the violin strings snaps with a loud twang, shocking everyone in the room. An examiner jumps to his feet in alarm and shouts that the string has broken. Cyril stays surprisingly calm, even though his string snapped during a critical part of the song. With quick thinking and a flash of inspiration, he decides to continue playing by using the A string instead, which leaves the examiners looking completely bewildered. The examiners give him a round of applause, praising him not only for his technical skill, but also for the incredible mental strength he showed by not faltering under pressure. Sophia pouts, playfully complaining that she thought she had finally won in the violin exam, and calls his unexpected success cheating, while he just humbly claims it was luck. After the dance portion of the exam, Cyril compliments Sophia on her beautiful performance with her senior partner. She thanks him but gives all the credit to her excellent dance partner. Cyril observes that the seniors acting as partners seem to have a similar rhythm, and that Sophia's partner was a particularly good match for her, making the dance look effortless. Sophia seems intrigued by the idea that her partner was similar to him, but then playfully teases that at this rate she might actually beat him in the overall score. When it's Cyril's turn, he notices that his assigned partner, a pale girl named Fall, seems very nervous. He politely introduces himself to Fall, and she shyly returns the greeting. They begin to dance together, and Cyril expertly leads her through a series of complex and graceful turns. He is impressed by her ability to follow his lead perfectly and realizes she must be a very skilled dancer on par with Sophia herself. He is puzzled by her talent, wondering why such a skilled individual never appeared in the original game, and she teases him for being distracted. She smiles at him sweetly, her cheeks flushing with a light blush. Fall remarks that while the rumored Sophia is impressive, Cyril himself is quite something, and asks if he was the one who taught Sophia how to dance. He asks her why she thinks that, and she explains that she gets the feeling that she and Cyril are the same, which triggers a shocking realization in him. With a confident smile, Fall suddenly takes the lead in their dance, pulling him into a new sequence of steps and leaving him utterly stunned. The examiners look on with confused expressions as they witness the unprecedented shift in the dance's lead. Cyril is momentarily panicked, realizing he needs to regain control of the examiner's notice, but then decides against it after a glance at Sophia's hopeful face. Fall is surprised that he has stopped resisting her lead. She reminds him that the man is supposed to lead and that he might get a bad score, but he says he has a different idea of what leading truly means. He asks her what her idea is, and she seems taken aback by the question. He knows that to guide his lady away from her dark fate, he cannot simply lead her by the hand down a path he chooses. He must be prepared to walk with her even if she chooses a path covered in thorns. His true duty as a butler, he decides, is to make his partner shine, and so he tells Fall that if she intends to lead, he will follow her completely. He asks her to let him help her shine even more brightly, even if it means bending the rules of logic itself. Fall looks at him with surprise, and then apologizes for testing him, offering to hand the lead back over to him. She spins away gracefully, and Cyril accepts her offer, responding with "Your wish is my command," as he prepares to resume the lead. His eyes widen in shock as he processes the incredible exchange that just occurred. Fall's movements become a dazzling display of skill far beyond what he could have imagined. Cyril quickly explains to the concerned examiners that the young lady has fainted, and he is only trying to protect her from the fall. The examiner expresses her concern, and Cyril reassures her that the girl isn't hurt, but suggests that her personal maid, or butler, should be called. A maid rushes to the girl's side, calling her Lady Pamela, as she gently tries to wake her. The maid introduces herself and agrees to take her mistress to the infirmary after Cyril notes that Pamela is still breathing and seems conscious despite her pale appearance. Pamela's maid thanks Cyril profusely for his help and promises to properly show her gratitude at a later time. Cyril apologizes to the examiner for interrupting the test and requests that the other students be given a chance to retake it. The examiner kindly agrees to a retest, but is surprised when Cyril states that he has forfeited his own right to a retake because he abandoned his partner mid-dance. The examiner looks at Cyril with a mixture of surprise and admiration for his strong sense of responsibility. The examiner agrees to his terms, but decides to only have his score as a penalty, and Fall apologizes to him for the trouble she caused. Fall then tells him that she doesn't think what he did was rude at all, and expresses her disappointment that they couldn't finish their dance together. With a final wink and a hopeful wish that he passes the exam without any trouble, Fall leaves Cyril standing alone in the hallway. Sophia approaches Cyril, and he immediately apologizes for failing to give his best performance as he had promised. She asks if he thinks she is there to scold him, and then gently tells him to raise his head. Sophia pouts, playfully showing her disappointment in him. With a knowing smile, she points out that while he did his best, he also intentionally used the interruption to lower his own score. Cyril tries to feign ignorance, but it's clear she has seen right through his plan. A few days later, while waiting for the exam results, Sophia suggests they check on the scores, even though it usually takes several weeks for them to be posted. They head to the results board, where a crowd has already gathered as one student explains that he saw the examiners himself and understands why the scores are already available. Cyril is not surprised to see the crowd, and they make their way to the front where they see Sophia has achieved perfect scores in all her practical exams. Sophia points out his score, but he is more focused on hers until she redirects his attention to his own shockingly low result. Cyril is stunned to see his dance score is only 51, and he remembers the examiner's promise to have it. Cyril is equally shocked to realize that without the penalty his score would have been an incredible 102, easily surpassing Sophia's perfect score. Cyril apologizes to her for tarnishing her perfect record with his own low score. Raymond is seen as he calls out to Sophia. He approaches Sophia with a letter containing his own exam scores ready to make his case for becoming her butler. Cyril politely intercepts the letter, insisting on checking it for any potential danger before handing it over to Sophia. Sophia is impressed by Raymond's high scores, and Cyril acknowledges that based on previous years his scores would likely be enough to earn him the top spot. He also admits that Raymond is talented enough to be considered for a butler position, even though he has no intention of letting him take his place. Sophia congratulates Raymond on his perfect scores in all the practical exams, but he humbly insists he is no match for her. Cyril mentions his dance score of 51, and Raymond bursts into laughter, mocking him for having the audacity to serve as Sophia's butler with such a pitiful score. Other students who witnessed the incident try to explain the reason for his low score, but Raymond dismisses their attempts to defend him. Cyril calmly concedes that in terms of their dance scores Raymond is the clear winner. Raymond is surprised by Cyril's unexpectedly gracious response, and Cyril smiles, telling him that he has no intention of giving up his position as Sophia's personal butler. With a look of fierce determination, Raymond declares that he will take the position from Cyril within 1 year. A few weeks later, their official admission notices arrive, and Sophia playfully sticks her tongue out at Cyril, who is still lamenting his 49-point deduction. Sophia's notice confirms she achieved near-perfect scores in all her subjects, securing the top seat with only a single point shy of perfection. A maid gently brushes Sophia's hair as she sits peacefully in her room. Cyril and Sophia ride in a carriage on their way to a clothing store to have his academy uniform tailored. The school's rule of equal treatment for all students regardless of their social status is still in effect even for this social studies assignment, which requires Sophia to visit a commoner shop. Cyril reaches out his hand to help Sophia out of the carriage, but she just continues to hold it as they walk. He nervously points out that she is still holding his hand. Sophia blushes and asks if it's a problem, while Cyril explains that his role as her butler doesn't automatically make him her escort. An argument erupts in the shop as a nobleman berates the owner for not having his son's uniform ready in time for the academy's entrance ceremony, while Cyril and Sophia observe from the entrance. Cyril notes with disapproval that the nobleman's servant did not make a reservation beforehand and wonders if it's the family's policy to let their children handle such matters themselves. A shop attendant warmly welcomes them, and Cyril encourages Sophia to take the lead in this hands-on learning experience. The nobleman's son angrily calls out to the attendant, noticing her attention shifting to the new customers. He demands to know why they can get a uniform made when his own request was denied, and the attendant calmly explains that Cyril and Sophia had made a reservation. The boy's butler tries to restrain him, but he angrily insists on his status as the son of Count Reed. Sophia quietly asks Cyril to make them stop. With a confident smile, Sophia steps forward and tells the boy to refrain from such behavior because power should not be brandished without a good reason. The boy is initially stunned into silence by her radiant and commanding presence. His attendant quickly whispers in his ear, revealing that the young lady is none other than Sophia, the daughter of a powerful marquis. The boy and his attendant immediately bow in apology, begging for forgiveness for their rude behavior, as Sophia tells them to wait. Cyril explains that he has reserved 2 sets of uniforms for himself and 3 for his lady. Sophia then graciously offers one of her reserved sets to the stunned boy. The boy gratefully accepts her offer as Sophia explains that the extra set is just a spare and not essential for the entrance ceremony. Cyril realizes that the boy's family had likely already prepared his uniform, and this whole situation was just a test of his character. The boy now owes Sophia a favor, and his butler and the shop attendant's calm demeanor throughout the ordeal suddenly makes perfect sense. Sophia asks the shop attendant if she can make the uniform for him, and Cyril privately considers the possibility that she knowingly created this situation to put the boy in her debt. The attendant leads Sophia to the fitting room to take her measurements, and she says a brief farewell to Cyril. In the fitting room, Sophia is surprised to see Alicia, the heroine from the Otome game. Alicia apologizes for not recognizing her sooner, and explains that she remembers seeing her dance at the prince's birthday party where she felt like a clumsy burden to her own partner. Sophia reassures her that she looked very nice, and Alicia credits her wonderful partner for making their dance so magnificent. Sophia's expression hardens slightly as she replies with a simple right, and a tailor asks Cyril to check the sleeves of the uniform they are working on. Cyril strikes up a conversation with the tailor, learning that Alicia is also a freshman at the academy, and begins to hope that she and Sophia might become friends. Back in the carriage with their new uniforms, Sophia feels that their enrollment in the academy is finally becoming real, and Cyril agrees. He knows he has a lot of work ahead of him to support his lady's daily life, and somehow repair her relationship with the second prince. However, he reminds himself that the most important thing is to ensure that Sophia genuinely enjoys her time at the academy. As they are talking, Sophia suddenly asks him why he is staring at her face. Their carriage comes to an abrupt halt, and Cyril instinctively pulls Sophia into his arms to protect her. The driver calls out an apology, explaining that some children suddenly jumped out in front of them. Cyril's expression darkens as he sees the word children and senses that something is wrong. He instructs Sophia to stay in the carriage for her safety and steps out to assess the situation while noticing two suspicious-looking men observing them from a distance. Cyril realizes that the children were used as a distraction to lure him out of the carriage, creating a perfect opportunity for an attack. He approaches the two frightened children and asks if they are all right, and they defensively ask if he is an enemy. Cyril calmly replies that he is not their enemy, and the children ask if he is one of the people chasing them. He realizes that the suspicious men are not targeting him and Sophia, but are actually after the two children. He asks the children why they are being chased, and the boy tearfully explains that his sister is in danger. He reveals that their parents sold his sister to the Dark Guild, and they are now running away from them. Cyril is shocked to learn that they are from the slums, a common but dark element in the world of the Otome game. He understands that just as the gaudy nobles represent the light, the Dark Guild, and the slums represent the ever-present darkness, that if this is a story event from the game, he knows he must handle it with extreme care, because the Dark Guild was a key factor in his own fated ruin. Sophia calls out from the carriage, asking if the children are okay. The boy desperately pleads with Cyril to help them, and Cyril realizes he can no longer pretend this is not his problem, but he tells Sophia that the decision of whether or not to help them is ultimately up to her. She looks at him with confusion, and he explains that as the daughter of a marquis, she must learn to accept the harsh realities of her world, that he tells her that sometimes a leader must sacrifice the few to save the many, and that while saving these two children is a noble act, it is ultimately just a drop in the ocean of suffering in their country, that he bluntly calls the act of saving them a form of hypocrisy, as it risks the safety of everyone for the sake of two individuals and serves only to satisfy their own sense of righteousness. The boy begs them to save his sister, pleading that the kind lady must be able to help them. The boy's desperate plea hangs in the air as he begs them to help. With a determined look in her eyes, Sophia makes her decision. She asks Cyril to help them. She acknowledges that her actions may be hypocritical and conceited, but she cannot simply look away when she has the power to save someone within her reach. She then reminds Cyril of his own words, telling him that if her words have the power to decide, then she is deciding to help. Cyril is taken aback by her newfound resolve, seeing that she is no longer the young girl who blindly followed his lead. With a proud smile, he bows to her and accepts her command. He turns to the children, and in the name of his lady, he promises to protect them. The girl finally speaks her brother's name in relief, and he embraces her happily. Cyril knows that by helping them, he is essentially stealing from the powerful and dangerous Dark Guild, a problem he cannot afford to leave unresolved. He decides that he must pay a visit to the Dark Guild's headquarters in the slums. A few hours later, two boys discuss the strange events of the day, noting that a high-ranking noble took two slum kids home with her. One of the boys, a blonde-haired youth with a confident smirk, comments that her actions are almost too good to be true. His companion suggests it could be a trap, but the first boy dismisses the idea with a casual denouement. The blonde boy closes a pocket watch and declares that they must discover her true intentions, because if she is genuinely on the commoners' side, they must win her over before the elites do. He looks out the window with a determined expression, ready to see what comes next. A new character named Liber, one of the game's capture targets, is introduced, and he looks out with a confident smile promising to see Sophia Rosenberg in school soon. Cyril stands in the heart of the slums where he knows there must be a dark guild base nearby, and he can hear the hushed whispers of the locals as they watch him with suspicion. A shadowy figure in a fedora warns Cyril that this is no place for a young boy and advises him to leave before he gets into trouble. Cyril confidently introduces himself as a butler from the esteemed Rosenberg house and explains that he has come to discuss the recent case involving the two siblings. The man scoffs at the idea of negotiating with a child, but Cyril calmly counters that if he wishes to speak with his very busy lady, he must come to the mansion. With a sly smile, Cyril reminds the man that just as he is a representative, so too should his own leader come alone. The man reluctantly agrees and leads Cyril to a nearby building, remarking that he truly is just a young boy. Cyril finds himself face to face with Nameless, the intimidating guildmaster, who sits with a woman on his lap, and confirms that he already knows why the young butler is here. Cyril is unfazed by the guildmaster's unexpectedly polite demeanor. He quickly deduces that the muscular man in front of him is merely a body double, and the real Nameless is the man standing silently behind him. Cyril recalls from the game that Nameless is a former noble who was stripped of his status after being framed, now leading a life of thievery and harboring a deep hatred for the powerful nobles who wronged him. He is confident that as long as he can make Nameless understand his argument, they can avoid any unnecessary conflict. A woman from the guild approaches Cyril and playfully offers to take care of him until he gets back home. Cyril politely declines her advances and gets straight to the point, asking if there is any chance of them returning the girl who ran away. He clarifies that he has no intention of interfering with their human trafficking business, but his lady has already promised to take care of the girl, so returning her is not an option. He places a stack of coins on the table and offers to buy the girl's freedom, understanding that the guild currently owns the rights to her. He clarifies that he is not actually buying her, but rather politely asking for the rights to her to be transferred to them. The guild members are amused by his attempt at a negotiation, and one of the women examines the single gold coin he has offered. Nameless understands Cyril's intention, but refuses the offer. The guild master then makes a counteroffer of 30 gold coins, shocking Cyril and the woman beside him. Cyril calmly accepts the offer without hesitation, and the guild master slams the coins down on the table in a show of power. As the coins are being counted, the Nameless quietly asks Cyril what they plan to do with the siblings. The body double explains that human trafficking is an essential part of the slums economy, and they cannot simply let the siblings go for such an outrageous price. Cyril interrupts their conversation and proposes a new plan to raise the siblings as loyal servants of the Rosenberg house, ensuring they will never betray his lady. The guild master agrees to the deal, but as Cyril is about to leave, he stops him with one final question. He asks if Cyril plans to save the children while abandoning their parents who still have outstanding debts. Cyril confidently explains that his previous statement about raising them as loyal servants was meant to imply that their parents' debts would also be taken care of. He looks at Nameless with a challenging gaze and asks if he had expected too much from him. The real Nameless looks at Cyril with a new level of respect, and his body double glares at him with renewed intensity. The body double violently slams his hand on the table, furiously demanding to know how a young boy dared to speak to him in such a manner. As the bald man expresses his anger, the real Nameless places a restraining hand on his shoulder, causing the agitated man to look back in surprise. Then the body double begrudgingly tells Cyril that they will accept the deal, as it is his irritated expression clearly showing his displeasure with the arrangement. Cyril smiles warmly and thanks them, expressing his sincere feeling that they will all enjoy a lasting and prosperous relationship from this day forward. From an unseen location, a voice comments on the encounter, remarking with amusement what a cheeky and audacious brat Cyril is. After the boys, the group discusses their impressions of him, with the woman remarking that she thought he was rather cute, while the body double in the hat observes that the boy completely ignored her, which the body double sees as a positive sign that he isn't easily swayed by a woman's charms. The body double reflects on the deal, admitting that while it mostly went according to their plan, he had a moment of panic when he first heard that a noble had taken the children, but is now relieved that they have successfully gained a connection to a powerful marquis. The real Nameless agrees with this assessment, but introduces a crucial point they overlooked, reminding them that children never forget their parents, and can be easily won back with a show of parental love, all while noting the significant fact that the boy had 30 gold coins ready for payment. With a sudden chilling insight, the Real Nameless declares that Cyril saw right through their entire scheme from the very beginning, understanding that the children's parents were the key to their whole plan. A diagram illustrates the Dark Guild's original strategy to use the parents' debt as leverage to force the children into becoming spies for them against the Rosenberg family, but it then shows how the boy completely dismantled this by paying off the debt with 30 gold coins, thereby removing the guild's leverage and creating a direct beneficial connection for himself. The body double scoffs at Cyril's move, dismissing him as a naive brat and confidently stating that if things don't go their way, they can simply break their end of the deal, which would spell the end for him. However, the Real Nameless disagrees with this simplistic view, countering that if the boy were just a normal kid it would be that simple, but the look in his eyes suggests he can see right through them. He further explains that Cyril is a monster wearing a child's skin, evidenced by his bold declaration that he would raise the children to be completely loyal servants, which shows an unnerving confidence that they would never betray the Rosenberg family, even if the guild used their parents as leverage. The body double is struck with a sudden shocking realization as the Real Nameless confirms this interpretation, leaving him to process the fact that this means there is no longer any reason for them to take the parents in. As the group tries to understand the new circumstances, with a woman admitting she has no idea what is happening, the Real Nameless clarifies the Cyril's true message, explaining that he is instructing them to ensure the parents live to see their children again, subverting their expectations of dealing with bad parents who would burden their offspring. Adjusting his glasses with a knowing smile, the Real Nameless concludes that he is willing to respect Cyril for understanding the dark side of their country, remarking that it seems they will indeed get along for a very long time. The scene shifts, offering a brief glimpse of the dilapidated rooftops of a poor and struggling district. Then the setting changes dramatically to the grand and opulent entrance hall of the Lawn Bell Royal Academy, where Cyril, now dressed in a school uniform, stands and decides his preparations are good enough for the entrance ceremony. Cyril places a hand over his heart and reaffirms his purpose, noting that while the path here wasn't easy, his academy life is finally starting, and it is time to devote himself fully to supporting his lady. He looks up the grand staircase towards Sophia waiting for him, and he acknowledges her presence, stating that he has been waiting for her. Sophia looks down at him with a blush and shyly asks for his opinion on how she looks in her dress. Cyril responds with a poetic compliment, telling her that any person who saw her would surely question the rumors about a certain saint who graced the ballroom, implying her beauty surpasses even that of legends. Sophia, however, presses him further with a flushed face, making it clear that she is not asking about what other people might think, but specifically wants to hear his personal opinion, Cyril's opinion. Understanding that for someone in her high position, simple flattery might seem meaningless, Cyril thoughtfully observes that no one is looking before pointing out that her hair ornament is a little bit off. He then closes the distance between them and pulls her into a gentle, reassuring hug, whispering into her ear that there is absolutely no way his lady, the one he has raised, wouldn't be cute. Completely flustered and blushing deeply, Sophia can only stammer his name, Cyril, while he smiles and playfully brings a finger to his lips, telling her that what he just said is a secret between them. A radiant and happy Sophia quickly agrees to his request, and Cyril then asks if he may have the honor of escorting his lady to her carriage. Cyril formally takes her hand in his, and together they turn and walk towards their destination, ready to begin their new life at Lawn Bell Royal Academy. The Academy's headmaster begins the entrance ceremony with a warm welcome to the new students who have all passed the difficult entrance exams. The student representative welcomes Sophia to the stage with an outstretched hand, praising her for her efforts. The long-awaited entrance ceremony at Lawn Bell Royal Academy officially begins, and Cyril reflects that his academy life is finally starting, but he has no time to rejoice. The students whisper among themselves, surprised that the freshman representative is the Marquis's daughter and not one of the elitist children. Cyril knows he must spare no effort to ensure his lady has a peaceful academy life and avoid her execution by navigating the two opposing factions at the academy: the elitists who favor a noble-centered society and the plebeians who seek equality. He remembers a rout in the game where Sophia became a radical elitist due to the maid's harassment and was ultimately executed after being exploited by her own faction, so he knows that maintaining neutrality is the safest option. His second challenge is to solve the problem of him being in the prince's position as Sophia should originally be in love with the second prince, but he is relieved that the heroine won't enroll for another 3 years. He listens as Sophia, the freshman representative, begins her speech, and he is confident in her abilities because she is naturally talented and he has already helped her prepare. With a bright smile, Sophia begins her speech by stating that originally she should not be the one standing on the stage, which leaves Cyril momentarily stunned. She speaks of her lonely and miserable childhood, believing her parents didn't love her, and being constantly harassed by her maids, which shocks and confuses Cyril, who wonders what she is saying. She then reveals that it was thanks to a kind person who reached out to her and taught her countless things that she is able to stand here today, and more importantly, she realized that her parents truly did love her. She concludes her speech by promising to do her best as a substitute for the person who truly deserves this honor, which earns her the admiration of the crowd. Cyril realizes with a grimace that her emotionally charged speech has turned into a chaotic mess that could be misinterpreted as a declaration against the commoners. The teacher announces that the students will now head to their designated classrooms, and Cyril finds himself in Class 1A of the servant course, where he is immediately hit by a paper fan. A boy scolds him for staring with jealousy at a girl he just met, and another girl apologizes for his behavior, explaining that he is just jealous of Cyril's good grades. The boy introduces himself as Luke, and the girl as Chloe, both of whom are in the servant course, and Cyril politely returns their greeting. They all take their seats, and the teacher begins the class. As expected of the top class, the students are already seated and attentive as the teacher begins his lecture on the 6 courses offered at the academy, which include the servant course, the general course, and the noble course. He slams his book down on the desk with a loud thud and announces that Class 1A is for the top elites who are already considered full-fledged servants. He then challenges the students, asking if they truly believe their skills are worthy of this honor, just because they passed the junior division exams. A student stands up to object, and the teacher angrily confronts him. The teacher warns the student that his honed skills are only considered valuable because he is still a child, and that people are more tolerant of his mistakes. The teacher then calls out the student's less than perfect scores in the entrance exam and challenges him to justify his arrogance. The students are shocked to learn that their strict teacher is none other than Tristan, a legendary former student who aced all his exams and enrolled as the top student. Cyril is amazed to realize that their teacher is not only a legendary butler who was scouted by the royal family, but also one of the capture targets from the Otome game. The student who had challenged Tristan earlier now bows deeply in apology, but the teacher humbly insists that he is just a butler and now a teacher. Tristan explains to the confused student that he was once just like them. He confesses to the class that as a student he was an arrogant brat who thought he was special, but in the real world he failed repeatedly and wasted a lot of effort. He then reassures them that he will help them with any messes they make at the academy and encourages them to take on any challenges they want. The student is moved to tears by his teacher's honesty, and the entire class is filled with a newfound respect and admiration for him. Tristan announces that in 1 month a welcome party for the freshmen will be held, and the students of Class 1A have been given the honor of setting it up. He challenges them to show their true skills, as pretty much everyone in the academy will be attending the party. The class erupts in a chorus of enthusiastic cheers, ready to take on the challenge. Cyril, however, is more pensive, realizing the high difficulty of the task, since even the academy's nobles will be in attendance. Tristan then asks for Cyril by name, and the young butler raises his hand to identify himself. The teacher mentions that he heard Cyril put on quite a show during the exam, but Cyril feigns ignorance of the matter. Tristan then declares that since Cyril is the top student in the class, he will be in charge of leading them to a successful party, but is interrupted by a loud clatter. Raymond, who also happens to be in Class 1A, angrily demands to know why Cyril is the top student when he only ranked second in the whole academy. He points out with outrage that Cyril only scored a 51 on the dance exam. The other students begin to whisper among themselves about how he could be the top student with such a low score, and Tristan grins mischievously as he asks Cyril to explain. Cyril knows that telling the truth would harm his lady's reputation, so he cleverly dodges the question by stating that he is not an examiner and therefore has no knowledge of the grading process. Tristan seems to accept his answer and tells him to prove his skills by setting up the party, which prompts the other students to protest. He then asks for all those who disagree with his decision to raise their hands, and a sea of hands shoots up. Tristan announces that those who raise their hands will be in charge of the preparations in the courtyard, while Cyril remains the top student. He then slyly suggests to the dissenting students that they could gain immense pleasure by making the courtyard setup even better than the main hall. The student who had initially challenged him now understands Tristan's true intention, and a wide grin spreads across his face. He vows to peel off Cyril's false disguise, and another student chimes in that it should be not just I. During break time, the other students complain about their terrible top student, and Cyril knows he cannot afford to lose to the courtyard team as it would stain his lady's reputation. He gathers the remaining students and asks them to share what they excel at and what they would like to do for the party. Luke then asks Cyril if he wants the party to be a success, which Cyril replied of course, and asks why. But Luke explains that to ensure the party's success, they must utilize everyone's strengths. Chloe points out that Tristan had encouraged them to take on new challenges, and Cyril agrees, reassuring the group that if they fail, he will be there to cover for them. Luke jokingly asks for Cyril's position, but then agrees to be his aide when Cyril offers him the role. They shake hands, sealing their new partnership, and Luke expresses his excitement about working together. The other students are amused by Cyril's unconventional methods, and Chloe comments that it looks like it will be a fun experience. The students begin to eagerly volunteer for different roles, with one boy excitedly offering to arrange the machine for the party, and a girl confidently offering to take charge of the music. Luke throws his arm around a surprised Cyril and comments on how his push was stronger than necessary, and that his formal speech makes him feel like a stranger. He then presents a summarized list of everyone's roles to Cyril and asks for a second look. Cyril reflects on how he has always been surrounded by people older than him in this world, and has never had a moment of rest in his duty to his lady, who is the only one around his age. He had always believed that this was his given role in this new life, but now surrounded by his peers, he feels a sense of belonging he has never experienced before. Luke asks if there is something wrong with the roles they have chosen, and Cyril, with a small smile, says that there is nothing wrong. He walks down the sunlit hallway feeling that this kind of experience is a welcome change of pace. Sophia sits at a desk with a thoughtful expression, a young boy with light hair and glasses standing beside her. Luke bursts into the classroom with a lunch bag, excitedly suggesting that he and Cyril spend their lunch break organizing the party. Cyril apologizes and tells a surprised Luke and Chloe that he has other things to take care of, leaving the party planning in their hands. Luke wonders why he left in such a hurry, and Chloe reminds him that as a personal butler, he also has to attend to his mistress in the noble class. Cyril arrives at the noble's classroom, and Sophia remarks that she had told him he didn't need to come during his lunch break. He explains with a bow that as her personal butler, it is only natural for him to worry about her. Sophia then asks him to brew some tea, and as he goes to prepare it, another student remarks on his young age. He politely introduces himself as a first-year student in the servant class, and the girl is delighted to hear of his devotion to his mistress. Sophia proudly adds that he not only is devoted, but also brews the best tea she has ever had. The other noble girls are intrigued and ask if they can have some of the tea as well, and Sophia agrees. Cyril wonders about their true motives for accepting the invitation to the impromptu tea party. He dismisses his worries and focuses on his duty as her butler, preparing the tea in the academy's kitchen. With a focused expression, he uses his wind magic to evenly steep the tea leaves in the kettle. He then uses his magic to keep the tea cups warm and carefully measures the brewing time with an hourglass. He carries the tea set back to the classroom, knowing he can't be too far away in case of any attempts to poison the guests. He carefully pours the tea, ensuring the last and most delicious drop goes into his lady's cup, and presents the local specialty of the Rosenberg territory. He recommends that they drink it without milk or lemon, and Sophia proudly calls him her butler as she takes a sip. One of the girl's attendants warns her not to drink the tea, but her mistress, a girl named, and is already captivated by its aroma. The attendant named Ferris is accused of putting something in the tea, but she insists it's not suspicious at all, and is amazed by the incredible taste and fragrance of the tea, declaring it the best she has ever had. She asks for confirmation that it is indeed just black tea, and Sophia graciously allows her to confirm its authenticity, and becomes possessively attached to her cup of tea, declaring that every drop is hers. The other attendants are equally amazed by the tea's incredible taste and apologize for their earlier suspicions. A girl with long black hair, who had previously been dismissive of the tea from a viscount's house, is now completely stunned by its quality. Cyril realizes that the knowledge of tea in this world is not as advanced as in his previous life, and that his high standards have set him apart. The other students are curious about where he learned such skills, and Sophia proudly explains that he has been great at it since they were children. The other students are impressed that he is self-taught, and Sophia offers to have him teach their servants how to brew the same tea. He understands her unspoken intention to share the technique without giving it away cheaply. She adds that while they are free to use the knowledge at their own tea parties, they must always give credit to Cyril as its originator. Cyril knows that this is a brilliant move on Sophia's part, as it will spread her name and his own throughout the noble circles. With this simple act of sharing, she has laid the foundation for her own faction at the academy. He is impressed by her strategic thinking and realizes she is a force to be reckoned with. Two of the noble girls are discussing the recent events, and one of them is unsure if the other ladies even realize that a faction is already forming around Sophia. Cyril then presents a plate of crepes with various toppings, a dessert that is completely new to them. The girls and their attendants are amazed by the unfamiliar dessert, and Cyril suggests they consult with their mistress about her preferred toppings. As the girls enjoy their crepes, one of them asks Sophia if her maid could also be taught how to make the tea. Sophia agrees and announces that their servants will be the first to learn the new techniques. Cyril sees that with just one tea party, Sophia has made herself known, and it is only a matter of time before a powerful faction forms around her, but he still wonders about her true intentions. As they walk down the hallway after classes, Sophia tells him she will see him later. Cyril stops her and asks what she is planning. She explains that the second prince is surrounded by people who favor the elitist faction. He has gathered them so quickly and obviously that it can only mean he also favors the absolute rule of the privileged class. She reveals that she is aware of his efforts to create a faction for her and that she understands the need to distance themselves from both sides. She then tells him that to do so she will also have to distance herself from him, since he is not a noble, which she would hate to do. Cyril is stunned by her cold logic and asks why she would suggest such a mean thing. She explains that she wants to avoid conflict with the prince, and if she is ever ordered as a noble to get rid of him, she would have to obey. With a look of fierce determination, she declares that she will turn against even the gods to change her fate. She tells him that she will take back her previous words and will make sure she doesn't have to fight the gods to save him. Cyril decides to trust her with building her own faction, while he focuses on avoiding conflict with the two established sides. He knows the best way to do this is to keep a safe distance from the elitists while secretly approaching Libert, a key member of the commoner faction. He realizes that the upcoming welcoming party for new students is the perfect opportunity for a natural meeting without any strings attached. As the new students' welcome party begins, the various characters with their conflicting motives gather within the glorious academy. The day of the party arrives, and Cyril is pleased to see that the preparations are going smoothly as he congratulates his classmates on a job well done. The students are amazed at how far they've come, and they all agree that it would have been impossible without Cyril's perfect advice and expertise in all fields. Cyril humbly insists he was just supporting their work and thanks them for their efforts, reminding them to stay focused until the party is over. As his classmates head off to get some rest, Cyril prepares for his own final checks. Luke approaches him and asks where he is going, and Cyril explains that he is doing a final check on the state of things with his own eyes. Luke asks if he can tag along and apologizes for how panicky he was at the beginning of their project. He admits that he is not a natural leader, but with Cyril's help he is starting to get the hang of it and thanks him for the opportunity. As they walk through the kitchen, Luke asks Cyril how he became so capable at such a young age. Cyril simply states that he has constantly put everything he has into becoming worthy of the title of his lady's personal butler. Luke finds his answer too formal, and Cyril asks if he can ask a question in return. Cyril directly asks Luke if someone ordered him to investigate his background. Luke feigns ignorance, but Cyril's expression remains serious. With a slight smile, Luke asks him when he first found out. Cyril admits he had his doubts from the very beginning, especially when Chloe knew his name at their first meeting and tripped to get his attention in such a suspicious way. Luke asks what he plans to do now that he knows the truth, and Cyril confesses that while he has seen him at work all month, he still has no idea what his true objective is. He adds that he has no reason to get rid of him when he is so earnest and capable, and it's not surprising that people would try to gather information on the Marquis household. Luke is impressed by his maturity and reveals that his mentor is his master's teacher, but he cannot say more for now. Cyril is flattered when Luke says he is glad they are on the same team, and he learns that Raymond has been acting like a slave driver with the courtyard team. He hears that the courtyard team is complaining about Raymond's dictatorial leadership and asks Luke to check on them tomorrow. Luke is surprised by the request, but Cyril explains that if a problem they can't manage were to occur, it would be their responsibility to deal with it. He reminds Luke that the courtyard team are still their classmates, and as the top student he cannot simply ignore their blunders. As the party begins, a worried Sophia runs to Cyril for help. She explains that there is a quarrel in the courtyard, and though they are trying to manage it, problems keep piling up. A friend of Sophia's suggests that it's a messy situation and he might be better off going himself. Cyril knows that if he goes, Raymond will likely snap at him for his low dance score, so he decides to let Luke handle it. As they are talking, another student informs Cyril that Sophia has come to visit him. Cyril is torn between his duty to his post and his concern for his lady, but Chloe reassures him that she will handle things in his absence. He entrusts the main hall to her and rushes to meet his lady. Sophia is waiting for him at the entrance to the ballroom, and he apologizes for keeping her busy. He asks if she needs something, and she nervously fidgets with her hands. She asks if there is something wrong with the dance hall, and he realizes with a blush that she wants to dance with him. He feels sorry for her as he knows he cannot dance with her because he is a servant and one of the organizers. As he is trying to figure out what to do, a voice interrupts them. A young man with light brown hair asks if she is Lady Sophia. The young man introduces himself as Libert, the son of the Liqueur Merchants Association's leader and a key member of the Commoners faction. Libert asks Sophia for a dance, and Cyril is immediately on high alert, knowing that if she, a noble of high standing, dances with a commoner, it will be seen as a declaration of her allegiance to their side. Just as he is trying to think of a way to handle the situation without provoking the elitists, he hears a familiar voice. Alicia, the heroine of the Otome game, appears and asks Cyril to dance with her. The other guests are shocked to see a noble girl inviting a butler to dance, and Cyril is stunned by her unexpected appearance, as he knows she wasn't supposed to enroll for another 3 years. He sees Sophia's expression darken and realizes she is on the verge of falling to the dark side. He tries to calm the situation by reminding himself that as an organizer he cannot dance with anyone, but his thoughts are interrupted. The second Prince Alforth appears with a bright smile and asks Sophia to dance with him. Libert is taken aback by the prince's sudden appearance, and Alforth playfully chides him for not being able to read the mood. Cyril is shocked to see the prince and Libert standing side by side, as he knows the prince is the core of the elitist faction. Alicia and Sophia are equally surprised to see each other again after their brief meeting in the fitting room. Cyril knows that this situation is a tangled mess of rival factions and romantic interests, and that he, as Sophia's personal butler, must find a way to navigate it without bloodshed. He is caught in the middle of a complex web of relationships with the villainous heroine and their respective love interests, all vying for his attention. With a final look of grim determination, he steels himself for the challenges ahead, knowing that he is the only one who can guide them through this mess. The key players have gathered at the academy, with Alicia, the heroine, unexpectedly enrolling 3 years early, the second Prince Alforth already smitten with Sophia, and Libert, the leader of the Commoners faction, making his move. Cyril finds himself in a precarious situation far beyond his expectations. A simple diagram illustrates the current tangled web of relationships with the villainous heroine and the leaders of the two opposing factions, all requesting a dance. As the Academy's faction upheaval is about to begin, Cyril stands in the middle of it, all surrounded by the key players. The prince's plea for a dance with is so earnest that it's far beyond Cyril's wildest dreams. Cyril knows he can't step in front of the second prince to help his lady. He is confident that Sophia can handle the situation well and reassures her that he is by her side. Sophia gracefully curtsies and tells the prince that while she is honored by his invitation, she is currently in a discussion and will come to see him later. Cyril is impressed by her response, as she subtly asserts her own standing without being disrespectful to the prince. She cleverly navigates the delicate social situation by promising to come to him later, a passionate response that is sure to please the prince. Cyril knows that the prince must be on cloud 9 after receiving such a response. The prince, however, is completely bewildered by her answer and asks why the hell? Cyril realizes that the prince may be trying to assert his dominance as a member of the elitist faction by interfering with the opposing faction in public. He then dismisses the idea as he sees the prince's lovesick expression and realizes he is just a clueless boy in love who completely missed the subtlety of her message. The prince's lackey then steps forward and condescendingly asks if Sophia is planning to reject His Highness's invitation. Sophia coolly asks if he is suggesting that she should ignore her current company to accept the prince's invitation. The lackey is speechless, and the prince is left fidgeting nervously. Sophia apologizes to Libert for the interruption, and Cyril sees that she can no longer say no to the prince. Libert smiles and tells her it's no matter at all. As an apology, Sophia offers to have her personal butler accompany him in her place. The prince's lackey then suggests that they open up the center of the dance hall for them. Cyril apologizes to Alicia on behalf of his lady and offers her his utmost hospitality while internally struggling to deal with Libert. Alicia agrees to give up on the dance, but asks if he would at least have a conversation with her. Libert finds her request amusing and tells her he doesn't mind at all. Alicia, with a bright smile, asks what the problem is if he's a commoner. Cyril recognizes this scene from the game as the moment where the noble-hating Libert starts to grow interested in the heroine Alicia. He realizes with a jolt that if these two start liking each other, it will lead to the route where his lady is framed with false accusations and executed. He knows he must readjust their course, but ruining their relationship would only widen the gap between the nobles and commoners. After her dance with the prince, Sophia says she needs to go back to Libert. One of the prince's attendants kneels before her and asks her to stay. The attendant then asks if she realizes the meaning of his request. Sophia is annoyed by the interruption, but knows she would be overstepping her boundaries if she were to rebuke him. Cyril is frustrated by her inability to remember her promise to a commoner and knows that completely neglecting their faction is even worse than avoiding conflict. He realizes that the difference in the amount of trust they direct at him is the root of the problem. Libert, however, seems to understand her intentions. He calmly accepts the situation and tells Cyril to keep his promise in mind. He then excuses himself, saying he has other business to attend to. As he leaves, Cyril is left alone with Alicia, who he had completely forgotten about. She asks him why he enrolled in the academy, and he realizes his mistake too late. With a blush, she confesses that she enrolled because she thought she might see him again. Cyril is horrified as he remembers that this is the line she says to the prince in the game as they head towards the happy ending. He tries to politely refuse her request for a dance by explaining that as a butler he is not in a position to do so. Alicia is disappointed but doesn't give up. She tells him she understands but asks for a promise in exchange. She confesses that she is bad at dancing and asks him to teach her later, claiming it is a butler's duty to raise poorly educated girls like herself. He tries to politely refuse again, but she grabs his hand and excitedly declares it a promise. He finally relents and agrees to teach her if the chance ever comes. As he is escorting a tired Sophia to a nearby room to rest, she thanks him for his help. She accepts a drink from Rausch with a weary sigh. As she takes a sip of her drink, she asks Cyril how things went with Libert. Cyril apologizes for his incompetence and explains that Libert is now under the impression that she is making light of the commoners because of his actions. Sophia tells him there is no need to apologize and expresses her frustration that he would make such a judgment after she put her trust in him. Cyril quickly reassures her that her responses were appropriate and that it was his fault. He then apologizes for failing to convince Libert and for making her dance against her will. With a menacing smile, Sophia declares that if the commoners are going to harass him, she will crush them with the elitists. Rausch is shocked by her sudden declaration, but Sophia explains that it would be an easy way to end the faction war and ensure no one gets between her and Cyril. She asks him if he would still follow her if she was serious, and he boasts, deeply declaring that he will follow her no matter where she goes. With a gentle smile, she tells him she was just joking and that they should now discuss their future policy. She acknowledges that today's incident has caused a misunderstanding with Libert, but it may have also caused her own faction to sway. She admits that she was naive and decides to explain the circumstances to her friends. She thanks Rausch and tells Cyril that she is fine to go back to the venue. She knows that the problem is how to deal with Libert now, and that it would be best to make another attempt at making contact with him. She asks Rausch to give him a letter on her behalf, and Cyril agrees to prepare one as soon as they return to the mansion. With a renewed sense of determination, Cyril vows that they will pull through this pinch and avoid the execution ending. As they are about to leave, Sophia stops him and asks if he was enjoying his conversation with Alicia earlier. He lets out a nervous laugh as he realizes her smile is even scarier than before, and that he now also has to worry about an ending where only he gets executed. Someone protested about the cold tea they received. There was also someone protesting about the dessert that hadn't arrived yet, making them wonder what was wrong with this place. The boy compared the hospitality there with what was at the main hall. He asked if they thought, as long as they had served the nobles well, then common people like them weren't important. But the maid said that was wrong. Meanwhile, Raymond and another butler started to feel anxious. Suddenly someone patted their shoulders and offered to take responsibility for this place. Realizing it was Luke who was grouped with Cyril, Raymond didn't accept help from someone like him. However, his members instead admitted that they needed their help, making Raymond surprised. Luke said he didn't know what the boy was thinking, but he felt Raymond was too hasty here. Those words made Raymond remember the words that in 1 year, he would find a new master, making him feel more upset. After that, the new students at the new student welcome party came and went. And today, they would hold an after-party and review meeting, also do cleaning up. However, before doing that, Cyril approached Raymond, who was already broken. Raymond asked Cyril if he wanted to laugh at him here, but Cyril said he wanted to bring Raymond back. Raymond felt upset with the meaning of the boy's words, especially since he believed Cyril had seen what happened before. When Cyril admitted, he remembered it, when Raymond was blamed for making a mistake by his group. They didn't even accept the apology because of Raymond's previous behavior of ordering them like a god and asked him to take responsibility. Raymond, who didn't fight back, made Cyril ask if the boy wasn't avoiding responsibility. Then, suddenly Raymond said Cyril was a good person, as people said. He admitted, hearing from Cyril's group, that he wasn't a bad person. He had even heard the reason why Cyril got a score of 51 in the dance exam. Finally, Raymond also apologized for criticizing Cyril without knowing his condition and causing a commotion in the class. But Cyril felt Raymond didn't need to apologize and just needed to show his attitude in the future. Raymond was surprised because Cyril forgave him just like that. But Cyril said it was also his fault for accepting the challenge without giving an explanation. So instead, Cyril asked why Raymond was so hasty even though he was quite capable. But Raymond said he couldn't wait until graduation because his father had died in an accident recently. Raymond then told about his father, who was an excellent butler, and left savings for them. But the savings weren't enough for his family's life for the next few years, so he promised to get a job in 1 year and support them. Cyril now understood the reason Raymond challenged him in 1 year. Then, Raymond apologized because he had caused problems for Cyril, making Cyril ask if the boy planned to give up. Raymond confirmed because he had failed to complete something, so there was no hope left for him. He preferred to find another job rather than spend a year here to support his family. But Cyril felt they were the same because Raymond was trying to make the best choice for his family. So that's why he didn't want Raymond to give up too quickly and invited him to be his partner. The offer made Raymond feel guilty because all this time, he had used Cyril for his own benefit. Meanwhile, he also met his group, and they all apologized to Raymond because they felt this wasn't just his responsibility. Their apologies made Raymond touched, while Cyril felt relieved after knowing this was Luke and his friend's plan. He also felt now he could relax because the new student welcome party was over and focus on solving problems with Alforth and Libert. Then, suddenly Alforth came to their class and asked if Sophia's butler was there. Everyone, including Raymond, was surprised by his sudden arrival. Everyone immediately felt excited, while Cyril told Alforth that he could just call him instead of coming here. But Alforth reasoned that discussing it in the noble class would make it problematic. Those words made Cyril wary and wonder if he came to give a warning message. So, he invited Alforth to chat elsewhere. After they were in the courtyard, Cyril felt Alforth's bodyguard was watching them, but he asked Cyril not to be tense. After that, asking what Alforth wanted to discuss, which turned out to be just wanting to ask about Sophia's opinion if he asked directly, and the girl said she didn't like boys who couldn't dance. The question made Cyril puzzled and asked why he didn't ask the person directly, but Alforth refused. In the middle of the discussion, Cyril suddenly felt strange because the elites seemed to ask such things to commoners and the butler of their lady. He was sure this must be his attempt to shake him. But he still confirmed Alforth's question by saying his lady didn't think the prince was bad at dancing, but the boy still insisted because he stepped on Sophia's foot. His answer made Cyril wonder because the prince was really worried that his lady would hate him, plus he treated commoners like him as equals. So, he asked his surprise about Alforth, who hated commoners. The question instead made Alforth confused why he had to be like that. The answer made Cyril surprised because Alforth didn't use the ideology of the elites as he thought. When Alforth asked why Cyril asked that, he reasoned that the people who followed the prince always said it. Alforth said they usually said that, but that was just their opinion because he didn't have such thoughts at all. He just wanted everyone to get along. Seeing his naivety, Cyril felt worried because maybe he would become Sophia's husband. He wanted to give advice to him, but he could be executed for that. So, he decided to tell Alforth that Sophia wasn't someone who disliked someone because they couldn't dance. But he told him, Sophia got a lot of attention because she was the child of a marquis. Therefore, it was important for him to pay attention to the people who interacted with him down to the conversation details. When Alforth commented on Sophia's family being very strict, Cyril felt frustrated because what he was talking about was the prince himself. But he understood because the boy was still 12 years old. After that, he asked what Sophia liked. Cyril felt annoyed because they had bigger problems, but suddenly he realized about the castle. He said that Sophia liked roses. Alforth said they had rare ones in the castle and planned to invite her there after Cyril said Sophia would like it. Meanwhile, Cyril planned to use this opportunity to free Alforth from the elite environment. Moreover, after knowing he turned out not to be on the elite side, many people still misunderstood him, and the worst was Libert and his commoner faction. So, he needed to make contact with them with Alforth soon. His friends asked Cyril what he talked about with Alforth. However, he couldn't tell because it was a secret conversation. When returning to his seat, Cyril thought about the prince who wasn't on the elite side, but the problem was the many people who thought he was an elite. People doubted Sophia as an elitist, but Alforth messed everything up because he boldly came to him. He suspected the commoners' faction would misunderstand. This made him feel the need to make contact with Libert soon, but he couldn't just break into another class. That's when Raymond came, who realized he was in trouble. Then he also conveyed thanks to Cyril for saving his face. So, he offered to help him if in trouble. Cyril said he was just looking for a way to meet Libert. Raymond immediately understood his goal was to meet the leader of the commoners' faction. The question made Cyril surprised and thought Raymond guessed he was part of the elitists because of Alforth's arrival a while ago. Before he corrected, Raymond already knew they met secretly and they were on the prince's side. He explained, when meeting Sophia, he tried to convince the girl to recruit him, but she refused because Raymond had quarreled with Cyril. Because he considered Cyril, who was a commoner, Raymond knew Sophia was never an elitist. He also suggested, if Cyril wanted a meeting without force with Libert, he asked him to try coming to the tea party he would hold. He told, although it was a tea party for the commoners' faction, people from the elitist faction infiltrated, so Cyril would be considered a spy by the elitist faction. Cyril knew this was a good opportunity, but he didn't know how to go to that tea party. Raymond suggested that he become a butler because one of the participants was a girl who had invited him to dance. So Cyril visited the girl, but he was blocked by the maid from the Viscount Lindbergh's family, Melissa, and asked to leave. Cyril felt anxious because he was yelled at in front of the door. When he asked, Melissa still told him to leave because her lady was busy. But suddenly, her lady came out of the room and was surprised to see Cyril there. Cyril said he was there just to deliver a message, making Melissa surprised. Alicia invited the boy to discuss it on the terrace while drinking tea. After the girl left, Melissa asked why he covered her actions. Cyril said he actually didn't cover Melissa's actions because Melissa had the right to be cautious of the boy. But Melissa still owed a favor just between them, not including Alicia. When on the terrace, Cyril praised Alicia's appearance, making Melissa nudge him to get to the main topic. Alicia realized there was no tea. She asked Melissa to prepare tea for them. When Melissa wanted to refuse, Cyril first said that he didn't need to because he would leave after finishing. Melissa asked what the boy was playing, but Cyril said it was useless to explain if Melissa also doubted him. Finally, they both argued while whispering until making Alicia feel annoyed and ask what they were whispering. Realizing that, they both reasoned. After that, Cyril started to convey his main topic about Alicia being invited to Libert's tea party. Cyril offered to be her butler, but Melissa immediately refused. Alicia asked Melissa to stop because she was rude to the boy. Melissa reasoned it was because Cyril was a servant, not a guest. Alicia apologized, but Cyril said she didn't need to apologize. Cyril realized he needed to convince Melissa, but at least he wanted Alicia to realize it. So, Alicia immediately asked what Sophia wanted to solve. Cyril was surprised when she said it, making Alicia ask if Cyril thought the girl wouldn't realize it. The girl then said Melissa told that her dance request caused various things to happen. Cyril understood. He also understood why Melissa felt wary, because she thought he was pulling Alicia into the elitist faction. Alicia asked why Cyril wanted to join the tea party. Cyril answered he wanted to contact Libert and inform that his lady didn't hold hostile feelings towards him. The statement made them ask if Cyril meant to say that Sophia wasn't on the elitist side. Cyril confirmed and said that his lady had no intention to discriminate against commoners. But Alicia was confused why Cyril told that information to her, and the boy said that the girl looked trustworthy. The girl blushed, making Melissa annoyed and Cyril anxious. However, he felt the girl was trusted because Alicia was a good person in the game. Cyril also explained he and Sophia had an ideology that contradicted the elitists and wanted to straighten out the misunderstanding about his lady by contacting Libert. When Melissa wanted to protest, Alicia asked if Cyril wanted to use her for Sophia's good. Cyril, who immediately agreed, made Melissa angry, but Alicia asked her not to interfere, especially since they already knew from the beginning. Then Alicia asked if that meant she could use Cyril objectively. Hearing Cyril allowed it, Alicia then offered him to be her partner instead of being a butler. The offer made Cyril bargain to be a butler only, but Alicia still forced until threatening indirectly. When thinking about it, Cyril felt anxious because it was impossible for him to report this to Sophia, especially after his lady entered the dark side just because he danced with Alicia. But he was sure Melissa would do something. Unfortunately, Melissa didn't act, making him annoyed. So, in the end he still accepted it, even though wondering how he would report it to Sophia. When going to his room, Sophia's maid said his lady was already waiting for him in Cyril's room. Roosh didn't explain anything and directly pushed him into the room and apologized to the boy. Her attitude made Cyril feel puzzled, but when facing Sophia, who looked angry, he hurriedly told his lady that he did this to arrange a meeting with Libert. But Sophia kept scolding him after knowing he was with Alicia. That's when Cyril also realized something was wrong with his lady. Sophia asked why Cyril didn't look at her, while Cyril felt anxious with his lady's abnormal condition. He asked Sophia to calm down, while his lady couldn't calm down. Then Cyril approached and exclaimed he had to calm down. That's when, suddenly Sophia's darkness disappeared because Cyril's face was too close. Cyril asked his lady to calm down and look into his eyes. Then he asked if his lady was aware she had lost control over her mana. He then asked her to relax and breathe slowly. After Sophia did it, she returned to her consciousness and asked what actually happened to her. Cyril explained it seemed Sophia suffered from a rare mana overcharge that made her exceed capacity. But he said it wasn't a problem, even though actually, that's what made Sophia fall into the dark persona in the espressivo of light and darkness. Cyclic always thought he became part of her attitude change, but he didn't expect it was because of her illness. When Sophia asked if it was okay, Cyril agreed, but he still wondered because Sophia became very emotional when dealing with the boy. Sophia apologized to him, while Cyril asked her to be careful because he would always be the only one in her eyes, especially Sophia was the daughter of a marquis. When Cyril wanted to report about the elitists, his lady asked if he still remembered the promise they made when they were little. Cyril admitted he never forgot it at all. Only then, he started reporting about Alforth, who wasn't included in the elitists up to the conditions that caused him to be considered an elitist. Knowing that, his lady asked to investigate. Then, when Sophia asked about Libert's side, Cyril explained Alicia was invited to his tea party and he offered to accompany her as her personal butler, but she instead asked him to be her partner. Hearing that, Sophia became angry because Cyril agreed without consulting her. But Cyril said this was all for his lady's good, making Sophia unable not to forgive him. To make up for his mistake, Cyril offered a tea, but it was refused. Then, he offered Sophia's favorite shortcake, making his lady tempted, but unfortunately Cyril failed because she was already aware. So, Cyril asked what he could do so Sophia would forgive him. Sophia asked the boy to promise her to listen to one of her requests someday. When Cyril asked what request she meant, Sophia hadn't decided yet, but the boy already felt something bad about this. But he still understood even though Sophia hadn't explained it. He didn't even care even if it was her heart's desire. A few days later, they came to the tea party. Cyril felt anxious because Alicia dressed too flashy for a commoner party. When Alicia asked if it didn't suit her, Cyril made an excuse by praising her, making the boy nudged by Melissa again. When Cyril got tea for her, Alicia felt annoyed because he acted like a butler instead of a partner. Cyril apologized, while Melissa said the task of giving tea should be her task. When Cyril offered to be a butler only, Alicia prevented him, making the boy laugh. Then, suddenly Libert appeared. Alicia apologized to him because she asked Cyril to accompany her as a partner. Meanwhile, Cyril talked with Libert for a while. Then Libert diverted his attention for a moment to ask if Alicia enjoyed this party. He felt happy when the girl said it was fun there. Meanwhile, seeing this situation, Cyril suspected there was progress for Libert's route now, especially seeing how wary he was of Cyril and Sophia because they were suspected to be members of the elitist faction. After that, suddenly Libert revealed he heard Cyril was an expert in brewing tea and asked if he could learn the technique. Cyril understood from behind those words, Libert indirectly wanted them to join as his allies. But he reasoned he couldn't show it because he needed permission from his lady. After that, Libert said he had something to discuss with Alicia and asked him to teach his butler. When walking with the butler asked if he wouldn't complain. Cyril felt no need because he already knew it was all a pretext, then mentioned the butler's name, Nicola, who was Libert's right hand. The boy was curious how Cyril could know his name, even though this was the first time they met. But Cyril reasoned he actually wasn't sure before Nicola confirmed, even though actually he knew it from the game. But Cyril wondered why Nicola disguised as a butler, especially since he felt Libert wasn't interested in such things. Nicola wondered because he didn't know, even though just now those people sounded familiar. His answer made Cyril think if what he meant was the current situation. Remembering the theory of going out with the trusted butler, made Cyril realize if from the beginning Libert knew Sophia trusted Cyril. Nicola's grin made him realize the reason Libert acted rudely at that time was just acting. He just realized all that was acting to not show Sophia was on the commoner's side. But Nicola said Libert only half trusted him because he was still wary of Cyril. The boy understood why Libert still had some doubts about him. Moreover, he already knew that Libert had lost a girl he considered his own sister at the hands of a noble who pretended to be his ally. After that, Cyril conveyed his initial goal was to tell them they were allies without interfering with the elitists. Then he handed a letter to Nicola. Nicola wondered because if the elitists found Cyril giving them this, he could be in trouble. But Cyril said that was the reason he gave it to Nicola. Nicola immediately understood his meaning and promised to deliver it to Libert. Then, Nicola asked what else he wanted to convey to Libert. Cyril also asked him to say that Alforth wasn't part of the elitists, then explained the reason. He also said that maybe he just failed to control his subordinates. After reporting that, Cyril wanted to return to Alicia, but was prevented by Nicola. Initially, he thought Libert planned to hurt Alicia, but he asked if it was because Libert liked Alicia. But Nicola still reasoned and defended Libert. Then he asked Cyril what his opinion was about the relationship of status differences. Cyril felt it didn't matter, especially when remembering Libert's route. Nicola praised Cyril, who understood so much about it, but Cyril said he would try cooperation next time because today he was Alicia's partner. After that, he went back to the girl. Cyril approached a mysterious robed man. The man teased Cyril, who looked like he wanted to see his mother and father, while Cyril was surprised to see him accompanying him today instead of the guild master. The mysterious man was surprised Cyril knew his true identity. After that, Cyril gave a job suitable for the guild. The man accepted the mission given by Cyril. Then after 2 weeks after Libert's tea party, there was a tea party held by Sophia's faction, which now had 10 members after the arrival of 5 new members, starting from Pamela, daughter of Courtford, to Alicia. When seeing Alicia, he remembered the girl who suddenly came to his class to invite him to lunch. The noble's arrival caused a commotion in the class, while Cyril felt annoyed. He refused her invitation politely, but Alicia still forced. When he hoped Melissa would help prevent, the woman was completely useless. Finally, he accepted Alicia's offer, but he said he couldn't for today. He offered to do it on another day. After that, Alicia left Cyril. He felt Alicia was so proactive today, but after remembering the plot from the game, maybe that's why Alicia did this. On the other hand, he also asked what his friends were doing because they were peeking at their conversation. Alicia's action earlier made him worried because her reputation as a noble could be ruined. So he decided to ask his lady to make Alicia a member of her tea party. Of course, Sophia immediately looked angry, but Cyril reasoned this was used to expand their influence because Alicia tended to side with commoners and would help Sophia's faction. When Sophia thought Cyril did this so he could be with Alicia, making Cyril panic and say he did this for Sophia's good. After that, Sophia agreed with his suggestion. When two people who never agreed were at the tea party, he felt there was movement between them, but he was very afraid Sophia would be angry. But he felt happy they both eventually became good friends. When he saw Melissa, he asked if there was a problem with her because he invited Alicia to the tea party. But Melissa felt it was good for Alicia, but there was a real reason that made her participate and made her want to vomit. Cyril understood her condition and understood this was hard for both of them. A few days later, at the Rosenberg villa in the capital, Cyril gave an invitation letter to Sophia in her room, which came from Alforth. The letter was an invitation to visit the castle's rose garden. When he asked if this was different from the rose garden managed by Cyril, the boy explained that it was different because in the garden there were unique species up to the royal family's symbol, blue roses. Sophia immediately got excited to visit together with Cyril. Then, Cyril asked the girl to write a reply and arrange the time. After that, he left Sophia's room. He thought, because this was a date, surely no one would accompany them, including the prince's two followers, son of Viscount Earl, Gilcliffe and Surges. He felt this was an opportunity to separate the prince from the elitists. A month later, when welcoming Sophia, Alforth was very nervous. He was also accompanied by his two followers, making Sophia and Cyril puzzled. Cyril felt this was very bad because Alforth wasn't freed from his movements, so he also accompanied Sophia in the end. He realized his bodyguard wouldn't interfere, but the problem was his two followers who wouldn't stop interfering. This also made him annoyed at the prince. Then, Sophia revealed that she was very excited with past tense, but unfortunately Alforth didn't realize the sarcasm. After that, they walked to the rose garden, which immediately made Sophia feel amazed. When the prince asked if she liked it, Sophia agreed. Then, suddenly Alforth's two followers interfered with the conversation between them until making Sophia feel annoyed. Cyril felt the need to get rid of them both, but he couldn't let Sophia say something reckless. He thought to leave it to the manly side of the prince, but he felt it was impossible. He had no choice to take the next opportunity. When shown the blue rose, which was the symbol of the royal family, Sophia felt amazed and very happy. That's when, suddenly Alforth offered to give one rose, surprising them all. Cyril knew it meant a proposal, and Sophia couldn't refuse it because it meant insulting the prince. They, the servants, also didn't have the right to speak. Actually, this was according to his plan, Sophia marrying the one she loved, Alforth. But he couldn't because his lady hadn't hoped to marry him. Meanwhile, Alforth was confused with Sophia's scared reaction. Cyril asked permission from Sophia to speak. He suggested to the prince to ask permission from the king first, because he couldn't give it carelessly. So, Alforth decided to postpone giving today. However, his followers didn't accept Cyril's action and belittled him until ordering him to kneel to Alforth, even though the prince had no problem at all. When Cyril was about to do it, Sophia asked him not to do that to those stupid people. When they both felt offended, Sophia started to tell that they were far more impolite because opposing someone whose position was higher. When Gilcliffe was about to attack Sophia, Cyril immediately defeated him and wanted to take care of Surges too. But it turned out the boy was already taken care of by his lady, making him annoyed because Sophia stole his job. After that, Sophia asked permission from Alforth to use his bodyguards. After being allowed, she ordered them to remove them both from her presence, even though the bodyguards were scared when hearing Gilcliffe threaten by bringing his father's name. Sophia then told Alforth to maintain his position even though still young and pure. The girl explained that people thought he was an elitist, a faction that looked down on commoners. That made Alforth confused because he never was like that. So, Sophia explained it was because of his subordinates' actions. The information made him disbelieve, because all this time he just didn't want to ignore anyone because they had different opinions from him. Alforth said, his instructor said that ignoring others' opinions would make them dislike him. Sophia asked the prince's butlers if they knew this, but they both admitted they didn't know. They didn't even imagine it would become like this. Sophia asked them to handle this problem. The butlers promised to do it and apologized, But Sophia felt they didn't need to apologize because their honor as the prince's caregivers had been tarnished, but she gave them their mistake by doing better now. After that, they said goodbye from the place. When arriving at her room, Sophia felt very frustrated, while Cyril asked her to calm down. But his lady still felt impolite in front of the prince and over the limit. She was worried it would cause problems for Cyril or her father. But he felt the prince had the right to scold them, so she wasn't wrong. When she asked for justification from Cyril, the boy instead diverted attention, making Cyril apologize and say that the girl wasn't wrong. Then, he invited Sophia to change the atmosphere. They both went outside. Cyril prepared tea and shortcake for her, also a rose. It was a rose that became the symbol of the Rosenberg family. She praised its very fragrant aroma. Even the thorns had been removed neatly. While Cyril kept praising his lady as usual and said that she didn't do anything wrong at all. At that time, suddenly two people from the slums, Roy and Emma, approached them. Sophia was surprised because they hadn't met for a long time and asked about their condition. They admitted they were healthy and thanked her for helping. They promised to do anything to help her. Then, Cyril said that his lady had given smiles on their faces, but Sophia reasoned it was for the good of the Marquis family. But still Cyril praised her for saving them. After that, he cupped her cheeks, while Emma covered Roy's eyes. Cyril said Sophia was his pride and happiness, then kissed her cheek. Sophia was surprised, then asked him to wait. The girl then closed her eyes when he prepared, but Cyril didn't do anything, and instead said the message bearer had arrived. The maid who delivered the message reported that Sophia was asked to go to the royal castle by His Highness. Sophia felt panicked because this was a direct order from the king since the king's envoy wanted her to speak privately with him. Cyril understood Sophia's panic, but he tried to calm her down and said he would protect her at the worst time. Sophia thanked him, but she couldn't sacrifice Cyril's life for her. So, she would do it with her own strength. Half a day later, Cyril received a message from Glaive, Sophia's father. In the letter, Glaive told him to do something about this. Cyril felt panicked because he entrusted this task to him. Glaive reasoned that he did it because of his agreement with Sophia, making Cyril puzzled because his lady had never told him about this before. After reading the explanation, the next morning at the royal castle, Sophia was accompanied by Cyril. But when there, Tristan, who was the butler of His Highness, said Cyril couldn't accompany her further than this. Sophia protested because Cyril was her personal butler, but Tristan explained the king wanted to speak privately with Sophia. When Sophia was scared, Cyril wanted to shake her hand, but Sophia said she would be fine and would go to end all this. Cyril, seeing this, felt that his lady had grown stronger and not like her former self. Cyril understood. Then he gave a scroll to Sophia, saying this was a lucky charm that would protect her. Meanwhile, when Cyril and Tristan were alone, Tristan was surprised because it turned out Cyril could be nervous like that. Cyril felt it was natural because his lady was called by the king. Then, when suddenly Tristan accused him of being the mastermind of everything that had happened, Cyril was puzzled because he accused him who was clearly a 12-year-old child. But perhaps Tristan was wary because he was Sophia's tutor. Cyril said his job was to do Sophia's requests, not manipulate her. When he asked the reason for accusing like that, Tristan just said he just wanted to ask, making Cyril suspicious. Then, Alforth came after knowing Cyril was there. He wanted to talk to the boy, but Tristan asked him to pay attention to his social position, but seeing Alforth's gaze, he allowed it. After that, they talked. Alforth asked why he made Sophia angry, even though he had done according to Cyril's advice. Cyril confirmed that his lady was indeed angry, but she wasn't angry at the prince. Then, Cyril asked why Alforth asked him, who was a butler from another family. Alforth said he didn't know who to trust after hearing his tutor had taught him lies. Cyril understood the reason why he came to him, but he asked if the prince would ask Sophia's reason for being angry at him. Cyril was sure the prince would ask him to reconcile them both, but Alforth instead said he did it because it was normal to apologize when he made a mistake. The answer made him feel amazed and predicted he would be worthy to be a prince with the right guidance. After that, he asked if the prince was ready to listen to advice from Cyril, even if it was rude. When Tristan wanted to protest, Alforth said he didn't mind and asked him to be honest with him. Then, Cyril explained that Sophia didn't have anger towards Alforth, but felt disappointed in him for letting his followers act like that. Because of his followers, he was judged as an elitist even though he wasn't one of them. Knowing that, Alforth said he should have told straightforwardly, but Cyril said there was nothing he could do because he was a commoner, while Alforth was a prince. The prince thought social position was no longer relevant in the academy, but Cyril said it only looked from the outside, and with Alforth's attitude of silently approving them, making the prince understand why Sophia was disappointed in him. Alforth asked what he should do. Cyril asked him to care more about his position and learn to understand convoluted statements. When Alforth asked if he would gain Sophia's trust if he did it, Cyril asked if he could be honest with him. When Alforth allowed it, Cyril said that he would never be able to gain her trust as long as he couldn't read the atmosphere around him and continued to act naive and selfish. But Cyril also said that the prince could start building trust from now on. He assured that Alforth could fix it and gain trust from Sophia. The advice made the prince excited and determined to do his best. Meanwhile, the king of Ephenir, Theodore, and the queen of Ephenir, Adele, discussed the reason Sophia vented her anger at Alforth was because the boy was unreliable. Adele felt she couldn't blame her, making Theodore wonder why Adele wanted to accompany him today. Adele then revealed about the Viscount's children, who were on the elitist side, and Alforth's tutor, whose movements were suspicious. Even revealing the actions of her child were their parenting mistakes, making him have no reason to punish Sophia. The king also understood that this wasn't easy, because it was just a power struggle between the prince's supporting factions. He also knew perhaps Viscount Earl used Jilcliffe and Surges as chess pawns and succeeded yesterday. Adele was confused because yesterday they had been caught, but Theodore was sure it was to make the children trust, and it wouldn't last long after they complained to Viscount Earl, which meant he knew Sophia didn't do wrong. He guessed Viscount Earl would drop criticism on Alforth. The king revealed he didn't care if one of his children ascended the throne, but he didn't accept his child's future being ruined because of his actions. So for the future of his kingdom, he had to decide whether Sophia was worthy to be an ally or would be given appropriate punishment. Sophia introduced herself to the king and queen. During the introduction, Adele observed her and bet that the girl was just a doll made by someone, even though there were rumors saying she was a saint walking among people. A servant pulled her chair, but Sophia still didn't sit, making the servant confused. While Theodore was surprised, the girl wasn't provoked. Meanwhile, Adele asked her to sit. After the first provocation, they observed Sophia's attitude like the rumors, making her sure she didn't get angry without reason and felt it was wiser to make her an ally rather than an enemy. Theodore explained the reason for inviting the girl was to discuss the incident in the Rose Garden. He explained about his pleasure because Sophia had expelled those two from Alforth and felt he couldn't blame her. But he had other concerns. Sophia knew about his concerns towards Viscount Earl, making the king surprised because the girl understood his situation. After that, she gave a scroll to the servant. When the servant saw its contents, he was surprised and immediately handed it to the king. Theodore was also surprised when seeing it. Previously, Cyril told Sophia the contents of the scroll note, which contained evidence of fraud and evil deeds from Earl. When Tristan asked where he got it from, Cyril kept it secret. Actually, he got the information from the man in the Dark Guild. The information which then also related to Libert, because Nicola had worked with him without consulting Libert. He suspected they were also looking for information to eliminate Alforth's followers. When the king read the results of the note, he felt the evidence could bring down Viscount Earl, making Sophia happy because this was the only thing she could do. However, the king felt surprised because he intended to make Sophia owe him, but now he was the one being played by that little girl. After that, suddenly Adele spoke very friendly to her, making Theodore annoyed because suddenly she acted like she didn't test the girl some time ago. When Adele offered to match her with Alforth, Theodore felt the woman was crazy even though the queen didn't say it directly. Theodore wanted to stop his wife, but he also wanted to hear the answer from Sophia. He wanted Sophia to be part of the royal family. However, Sophia said that there was someone she wanted to walk side by side with, and all this time, she only did what she could do to catch him. Theodore immediately knew the girl wasn't talking about Alforth, especially when she said earnestly, "No matter against God." The queen was surprised, while the king understood that what she meant by God was the royal family. The servant realized this was a form of betrayal, but Theodore asked him not to interfere. The king decided to pray for Sophia's love to be blessed by God. After finishing, Sophia approached Cyril, who was in the room, but she was surprised when seeing Alforth was also there. Alforth apologized and explained he was just chatting with Cyril, then left them. Meanwhile, Cyril felt relieved because it seemed everything went smoothly. When they talked intimately, Alforth, who observed them, had suspected that the only one Sophia trusted was Cyril. Then, suddenly he slapped himself, then faced Sophia to apologize for what happened and promised to give a proper apology later. Alforth's attitude made Sophia puzzled and asked what happened to him. Cyril just answered that he started to reflect on his mistakes. Meanwhile, Theodore and Adele discussed about Sophia. Especially Theodore hoped the girl could join their family. He also became curious about who the person she loved was. Adele suddenly remembered the girl had a partner at Alforth's birthday party who had etiquette and attitude that was not at all less refined than Sophia and was called a butler. The information made the king confused, while the queen immediately asked about it to Tristan. Tristan told the person was his nephew, Sophia's personal butler. The information made the king surprised and suspected him as an older person. But Tristan said his butler was still 12 years old, like Alforth, and a student in his class. They weren't surprised Tristan appreciated him highly because of the entrance exam and his achievements at the welcome party. Theodore suspected that he could have taken the entrance exam if he didn't fail the dance exam. Even, Adele felt the boy was more talented than Sophia. But Tristan felt there was something strange about his score because Sophia was wrong in answering easy questions, making Theodore and Adele wonder. Tristan explained that there was only one child who could be called an honor student, and if both had perfect scores, Sophia would still be number one because she was a noble child. Knowing Sophia, who wanted to make Cyril an honor student, they were surprised by their relationship, especially because Cyril also tried to make his score below Sophia. Adele felt even Alforth wouldn't be able to compete with the boy. So, she planned to make Cyril her child, then the queen left them both. The king was anxious because of that plan. Theodore teased Tristan because the butler who became a teacher for the noble lady felt like his story back then. Tristan then diverted attention by reporting that during the incident in the rose garden, he heard Sophia's eyes turned red for a few moments. The news made the king surprised because it turned out Sophia also suffered from mana supercharge syndrome. This made him feel anxious and wonder if this was the work of fate. But Tristan asked him not to worry because if his guess was correct, then Cyril was more talented than him and might be able to save Sophia. When Theodore asked what made him assume like that, Tristan said he had done an investigation and the king was the first person told. However, Theodore wondered if that was possible. Tristan agreed because they both were unusual existences, especially Cyril. He was also interested in how he could get a score of 51 in the exam. After telling that, he felt it was natural with Sophia becoming extraordinary because she had a talented tutor, but he was confused where Cyril learned it because normally he had average scores. Especially he should appear in the academy 3 years later, and now, the boy acted like a very different person, making him think there was only one big possibility to explain this. Meanwhile, Cyril asked what Sophia discussed with the king. Especially he was worried Sophia would be forced into matchmaking. However, Sophia asked him not to worry because her plan went smoothly. Cyril was puzzled when Sophia mentioned plan, but Sophia said it was a secret that she would hide from Cyril. A few days later, after Sophia's meeting with the king in a research room in the royal castle, someone approached Tristan, who was there, and asked about the progress of his research. Tristan apologized because he didn't find any progress, even though he had done everything. The man wasn't surprised because they could never run from fate, making Tristan hope he had more knowledge. But the man felt he didn't need to do that because no one blamed him. Meanwhile, Tristan told, possibly there was someone who might be able to free them from their fate. The man asked if they could trust that person. Tristan wasn't sure for now because that person, Cyril, was like a reincarnator who understood about the story of the espressivo of light and darkness would end. He also looked like a good person because he saved the villainess from execution, but he also saved other main heroines like Alicia and stole their hearts. He wasn't surprised if Cyril aimed for a harem for himself. Because they didn't know his real purpose, he felt it was risky to ask for help. So, he told the man that perhaps his speculation was wrong. The man didn't mind, he was just afraid they would lose hope. And as long as they still had it, he didn't give up. He also asked Tristan to do what he could do. He didn't mind if he had to use his life. So, Tristan then told him this plan. Meanwhile, at the academy, Cyril's classmates asked him excitedly because they suspected he knew about what happened to the Viscount Earl's children who voluntarily resigned and kept asking him various things until making him annoyed with this rumor. Fortunately, they stopped asking when someone told them to go to the next class. When going to the next class, Cyril still kept thinking about those two and thinking about how the elitists faction moved. However, suddenly Tristan called him to tell about the student council registration. Hearing about the student council, Cyril remembered it in the game and was arranged by Alforth. However, he wanted to know who the student council manager was, but Tristan just said for him not to worry. The answer made him suspicious and think about the man's real meaning, but he said he would discuss it first with his lady. When telling it to Sophia, the girl was surprised because they were recruiting because this topic apparently wasn't heard in the noble class. Sophia only heard there was only one student council member from a teacher. So, she wondered why they opened registration. Cyril understood this sounded strange, but he now knew it meant Tristan, who suddenly brought this topic to them. He had investigated the student council president, and he felt that person didn't match what Tristan told. It made Cyril feel there were many things that were odd, or he was just paranoid. After that, suddenly he asked if Sophia wanted to join the student council. Sophia agreed, and asked if Cyril wanted to know the reason. When Cyril wanted to know, Sophia instead didn't say it, making Cyril confused. When arriving at the student council room, Sophia asked what the student council members were like, and Cyril answered they both had met him once. The answer made Sophia confused. When they entered, they were greeted by Foal, who was the student council president, the person who was once paired with Cyril in the dance exam. Cyril knew the girl was a commoner raised as a noble, but he was confused why Tristan didn't talk about it bluntly. Suddenly, Foal said that she didn't need their help here, making them both surprised. Foal apologized for the problem that made them come to the student council room, but she didn't emphasize that she didn't need their help and asked them to leave. But Sophia said that they were asked by the teacher to join the student council and asked Foal's reason for rejecting them. The reason for rejecting them was because Sophia was a girl who caused a commotion since joining the school, while Cyril was a butler who couldn't cover his lady's actions. Even so, Sophia still didn't give up and asked her to test them to see if they were useful or not. Moreover, she mocked Foal as someone who judged someone based on meaningless rumors. Cyril felt anxious with his lady's actions, making him curious what her motivation was to join the student council. But he felt strange because Foal must know about them from the entrance exam, and it was impossible for her to judge them as useless because of rumors. When Foal asked Sophia's reason for joining the student council, Sophia said she had a goal she wanted to achieve and was sure following the student council was a quick way to achieve it. When Foal asked if even having a senior like her, Sophia felt she didn't mind because Foal looked like Cyril. The answer made Foal ask what Cyril taught after Sophia said they were similar suspiciously. However, Sophia said that Cyril was very kind even though sometimes rude to her. That was the reason she believed Foal had a reason to provoke them like that. Foal understood her meaning, so she would give them a test to see their eligibility to join the student council. She would tell the test tomorrow, and she would also judge it. Cyril felt Foal would definitely ask for impossible things from them, and might still fail them, even if successful. But he felt his job was to make the impossible possible. So, they both accepted it without any rejection. When Emma and Roy attacked Cyril using their wooden swords, Cyril managed to hold their attacks and counterattack them, defeating them in the first round. Roy protested to him for being too serious in training, but Cyril felt Roy was the one who took him too lightly. After that, suddenly Roosh called him and handed a shipment of investigation report. Cyril asked the two children to train themselves, while when he opened the document, Roosh teased him by asking if he was sure to let her bring such an important document because she could peek. But Cyril said there was false information mixed with this report, making Roosh panic and say she was just joking earlier. From the report, he found that Foal was actually a royal noble, Alforth's cousin. He suspected Tristan must also know this, but he kept it secret from Cyril. Then there was someone who wanted Cyril and Sophia to enter the student council, but Foal rejected the idea. He felt something was wrong, but didn't want to think about a possibility. When Roy called him and reported he managed to defeat Emma, Roosh said it seemed they both liked Cyril more than her. However, seeing Cyril's reaction, Roosh asked if the boy felt disliked. Cyril reasoned he was the one who suggested Sophia to abandon them, so he felt unworthy to get affection like that. Roosh laughed at Cyril's worry and said they did it not because unaware, but because Cyril was kind to them. When Cyril wasn't sure, Roosh confirmed it. Then the maid said sometimes she forgot that Cyril was still small because always acting mature. The next day, at Lawnbell Academy, after Tristan finished with class, he called Cyril. Tristan said the student council president wanted him to come to her place. Cyril understood, but he was puzzled because those weren't words said by a teacher to his student. Then, suddenly Tristan asked about the student council president who rejected them entering the student council. Also asked if Cyril liked thorny flowers. Cyril didn't understand Tristan's meaning about thorny flowers, but he answered he wasn't interested at all in growing flowers other than roses from the Rosenberg house. After that, he left Tristan. When entering the student council room, Cyril said, "Excuse me," while Foal looked still focused on her work. When observing Foal, who didn't say anything, Cyril realized the wind magic she used, which although small but still very tiring. Cyril still thought about it, while Foal's maid awakened her lady from her work. When she saw Cyril, she was surprised and asked why the boy could be there, which instead made Cyril confused because she allowed him to enter. Foal apologized for saying it without thinking, but Cyril didn't mind. Cyril then asked what Foal's reason for calling him was. The girl wanted to discuss the contents of her test. Cyril guessed if Foal wanted him to convince Sophia not to join the student council. Foal confirmed it, but Cyril immediately refused. Foal felt annoyed because he still hadn't told the reason, even though Cyril already knew the reason. Foal was annoyed because he already knew, but still refused it. Cyril already knew 3 years ahead something would happen to Foal, but he still didn't want to stop Sophia. Cyril reasoned his lady was no longer a child and needed to be guided by him because this was Sophia's own choice. Foal felt frustrated and let him, but she would still give them her test. Then, at night in the Rosenbergs' mansion, Roosh told Cyril that Sophia was already waiting for him in the boys' room. Cyril felt déjà vu with this, and he was immediately shown with Sophia, who looked annoyed. Cyril reported he met Foal in the student council room, making Sophia jealous because they were alone there. But Cyril said the situation was the same as him and Sophia now, making Sophia embarrassed. Her strange attitude made Cyril puzzled, but he felt manipulated by Sophia, who just wanted to be alone with him, making him annoyed. So, he tried to joke by approaching her and saying that he would punish her if she did this again. Sophia was immediately surprised, then asked Roosh to enter. Meanwhile, Cyril asked her to return to the main topic. But Sophia instead looked blushing, making Roosh ask what Cyril did to her lady. Cyril also felt puzzled even though earlier he said he would punish her. After that, they returned to discuss what happened in the student council room. Cyril was asked to ask Sophia to give up. Then, he also told their test, namely restoring Alforth's good name, who lost his position after the recent incident. Cyril suspected this was because Foal was close to someone from the royal family because Tristan arranged it. This made Sophia realize her reason for rejecting her to enter. Cyril felt if they failed, Foal would be responsible for this, so he was sure even if they succeeded, she would look for mistakes and fail their test. When Cyril said that they could withdraw, Sophia instead became more challenging. Then they discussed the plan to complete this test. So, she wanted Cyril to take credit while she did the test. Cyril agreed to his lady's order. Meanwhile in the palace, Adele was surprised to hear the servants report that Alforth wasn't open to his tutor, who was aged because of trauma. The problem was, there was no tutor who wasn't an adult, but suddenly she remembered Cyril. She felt this was the right way to allow him to enter the royal family. So, she asked the servant to ask Alforth to rely on Cyril. When visiting middle school, Noble Course 1A, a butler didn't allow Cyril to enter even though he was from Rosenberg's house. However, when Cyril was about to leave, the servant finally allowed him to enter after knowing he was Cyril, even apologizing for his rudeness. After that, Cyril conveyed to Alforth his purpose for coming because of the student council's request to help Alforth restore his position. Alforth already knew and felt this was the right time because he asked the queen to rely on Cyril after his last mentor was fired. Cyril understood, but he didn't expect the king and queen to pay attention to him because of what happened due to the incident. But he still decided to become Alforth's counselor starting today, making the second prince feel happy. After that, Cyril started training him by giving opinions about the current situation. He corrected Alforth's shallow answers. Alforth was surprised because it turned out it wasn't easy to erase his mistakes for accidentally siding with the elitists. But Cyril suggested building trust by staying silent or giving public statements. The second prince chose to make a public statement. He did it because he felt guilty because Cyril came to help him restore his name, but he couldn't sacrifice his people just for his own safety. His thinking made Cyril not surprised because he was a character from the main route, but he still offered to help Alforth restore his name. Cyril did it by spreading a rumor that Alforth was manipulated by the elitists faction. After that, he also gave Alforth posture training, teaching him to act like a royal noble member. When Cyril asked for a break, Alforth forced because he could still move. Cyril said rest was important and gave his advice, making Alforth amazed because the butler was very knowledgeable even though Cyril didn't feel so and only learned what he needed to know. But Alforth still said he could still stand because that was the reason Cyril paid attention to him. However, Cyril still asked to continue after school. When he was outside, Tristan suddenly appeared and felt there was something interesting happening to him, even though the boy didn't feel it. But Tristan wasn't stupid because it wasn't normal for a child as young as him to become a mentor for the royal noble family. When he mocked Tristan, who protested the choice of the royal noble family, the man instead praised Cyril's clever tongue. Then, he asked why he became Alforth's mentor. Cyril said he was sure Tristan already knew about his test, but the man still felt puzzled because he didn't imagine he did something complicated and risky for his position. Tristan knew Cyril's position as Sophia's loyal servant, but he felt there was another reason, so he asked what the boy's purpose was. Cyril only conveyed his purpose was clear because he was Sophia's butler, for Sophia's good and happiness. A few days later, Alforth joined Sophia's faction tea party. Sophia asked him to enjoy his time here, even though this was just a simple meeting. Then, Alforth thanked her, while Cyril watched the prince's attitude. They enjoyed the served food. Alforth asked if it was made by Cyril. Cyril said he only taught the chef to make it. After that, Alforth commented about him being able to eat the baked waffle every day as long as he had the chef. The prince's statement made everyone suddenly silent, making Alforth confused. Cyril said his words could be interpreted as handing Cyril to the chef. Cyril's action of directly reprimanding him surprised people. Even Alicia was also worried and asked if Cyril's action earlier was bad. But Sophia asked her not to worry. Meanwhile, Alforth said he didn't mean that and apologized. Then, Cyril advised him again not to easily apologize as a royal noble. While Cyril advised Alforth, other Tea Party members discussed about the prince who was rumored to be controlled by the elitists. After that, Cyril reminded Alforth's purpose for coming here. The prince immediately said his reason for joining Sophia's Tea Party was to explain the accusation he was an elitist was a misunderstanding because he never looked down on low nobles to commoners. Then, Sophia asked why Alforth was surrounded by people from the elitist faction. Alforth admitted it was because of his stupidity, so he apologized for causing problems for everyone. Cyril knew a royal noble shouldn't apologize like this, but with his attitude, he knew Alforth would get people's hearts. After saying the apology, Sophia concluded the prince wanted to be able to talk with commoners. So, she accepted the apology. Sophia's statement made the boy touched and thanked her. However, now the problem was with Libert. At that time, Alicia suggested inviting Libert to the party and offered to convey it to him. However, Alicia said she needed someone to help her, and she chose Cyril. When Alicia asked why Cyril walked behind, the butler reasoned because of his status as a servant. But Alicia instead matched her steps, making Cyril want to rely on Melissa, but she acted like not seeing. Cyril knew it wasn't good for a noble to suddenly visit a commoner, but because this was a special case, he told Alicia that this wasn't a problem. Then, Alicia asked about Cyril's relationship with Sophia and revealed her envy of their relationship. When they arrived at the commoner class, Sophia's arrival surprised them and made them excited. Meanwhile, Libert looked calm seeing Alicia there. However, his gaze turned sharp when seeing Cyril with her. Cyril apologized, then gave an invitation letter to Libert casually. He told it was an invitation to Sophia's tea party dedicated to people in her faction. He told Alforth would also attend, making people excited and talking about the rumor about the prince. Libert asked if Cyril wanted to get them in trouble, but Cyril said he didn't plan like that. But Libert gave a negative reaction because he heard that Alforth hated commoners. When Alicia panicked, Cyril instead grinned. He then explained about Alforth's situation to Libert up to the prince's hope to have a good relationship with him. Cyril knew Libert was actually acting after knowing his real purpose so the commoners could hear them, confirming Alforth, who asked Sophia to be his bridge with the commoners' faction. Libert accepted the invitation, then asked how many people he could bring. Cyril said there was no limit, as long as he could be responsible for them. His words made Libert suspicious, so Cyril was anxious and puzzled because he still didn't trust the butler. However, when Alicia spoke, he suddenly became friendly, making Cyril annoyed. A few days later, at a place in the academy, the tea party was held. Alforth, who came, called Cyril. The butler praised the clothes worn by the prince. He used clothes like Cyril suggested, even though he felt it was very plain. Cyril said it was the best choice for certain tea parties. Alforth thanked him, but Cyril said this was thanks to Sophia. Knowing Cyril wanted him to thank Sophia, Alforth wanted to do it, but Cyril said for him not to shout his thanks. The tea party went smoothly, and everyone had casual conversations without worrying about class. Until finally the main actors, Libert, Sophia, and Alforth were gathered. Cyril could feel the pressure from Libert and Alforth. However, Sophia broke the silence by offering food. Alforth knew it was made by Cyril, while Libert didn't expect the butler could make something like this, making Sophia proud of Cyril. Then, Sophia opened the conversation by asking if this crepe could be popular among commoners. They then discussed sales, including ways to make special ones for nobles and cheaper commoners. Then, at that time, suddenly Sophia said she entrusted the recipe to Alforth, which immediately surprised everyone. She reasoned it as her apology for the incident in the rose garden. She forced when the prince refused. When accepting it, suddenly he offered it to Libert and conveyed an apology to all commoners' faction because he was once used by the elitists' faction. He even bowed to them, making them surprised. He also entrusted the recipe to Libert. He gave it so Libert could get all the profits. Libert felt honored with Alforth's offer, but he couldn't accept it. He refused it because, as a merchant, he couldn't accept a deal without fairness for both sides. Libert, who didn't understand, was immediately explained by Cyril up to the monopoly in the merchant guild, which made Libert panic. After explaining it, Alforth felt it sounded difficult, but Cyril asked him not to worry and mocked the prince, making Libert feel sorry for him. Even though Cyril admitted to be softer in teaching him compared to when being Sophia's tutor, Libert felt Sophia must feel difficult, but the girl instead wanted Cyril to be stricter, making Libert silent. After that, suddenly Alforth felt he couldn't accept it and felt the profit should be gotten by the girl. But Sophia reasoned she already got a reward for helping the prince. Then suddenly Libert agreed with Alforth, and they ended up talking together. Seeing their interaction made Cyril feel happy because Sophia was no longer isolated like in the original story and surrounded by friends. After that, he said goodbye to her and left her. Cyril then played the violin to entertain the guests. At that time, suddenly Sophia also played the violin on stage. Cyril felt puzzled, but Sophia said the three of them would discuss it again another time. Sophia then revealed she couldn't just stand and watch Cyril do something that looked fun. Then, she asked Cyril about the butler, who all this time realized Sophia's desire, but Cyril didn't answer it. Alicia was very amazed by Cyril and Sophia's performance. She also wanted to try performing together with Sophia, even though she might not be as good as Cyril. Sophia allowed it, but the problem was Alicia didn't have a violin. So Sophia lent Cyril's violin. After that, they both played the violin together, while Cyril below, he even saw Alforth, who also wanted to play until asking his servant to fetch his violin. Cyril didn't expect his idea to prevent visitors from getting bored to succeed. Then, suddenly Libert, who appeared, also praised this party. Seeing the boy, Cyril apologized for leaving him as his guest. But Libert didn't mind. He also finally believed that Alforth wasn't part of the elitists' faction. When observing Sophia and Alicia's performance, Libert didn't believe the girls weren't part of the elitists' faction. Then, they started talking about Sophia, who was a hard worker and special. But Libert felt this was all because of Cyril there. After that, Libert invited him to discuss the crepe's sales. That's when Cyril admitted he didn't have much knowledge about business. His words made Libert puzzled because Sophia asked him to consult with Cyril, making the butler immediately panic. Cyril apologized because he didn't meet Libert's expectations and told his only idea was to sell it to nobles first, then to commoners. However, the idea instead made Libert surprised because he didn't think of that method at all. Libert's words made him realize about the big difference between nobles and commoners in this world, so Cyril's idea wasn't normal. After finishing the discussion, Cyril said goodbye to return to his lady, but Libert grabbed him first and asked the butler to tell everything he knew and promised to pay for it. Libert's merchant soul made Cyril anxious, especially when Libert said that Sophia had given permission to talk with the butler. After their discussion finished, exactly Alforth and Sophia's performance finished. That's when Cyril asked if Libert wanted to duet with Alicia, but the merchant said he would hold back for now, making Cyril puzzled even though the girl would definitely be happy. Libert confirmed, but after hearing Sophia's duet with the butler, he didn't have the courage to invite her. Then, the boy left to introduce himself to other nobles. Meanwhile, Alforth looked very exhausted. When Cyril asked his problem, the prince admitted it was because of his duet with Sophia. Alicia also understood the feeling, and they apparently also experienced skill gaps in dancing, Alforth with Sophia and Alicia with Cyril. Alicia encouraged Alforth. Then they both determined to practice together, so as not to disappoint next time. The conversation made Cyril and Melissa anxious. At that time, the butler eavesdropped on people talking positively about Alforth, making Cyril amazed because this was the prince's attitude succeeding. The success made Foal, who surprised with her arrival, praise Cyril. However, Cyril was curious how the girl could enter this tea party. Foal kept it secret. Then when Cyril asked why she was here, Foal answered to see the results of their test. The girl praised him for successfully making the impression that the prince wasn't part of the elitists' faction. However, the praise from her made Cyril suspicious, especially the result depended on Foal's decision. However, Foal instead said that she passed him without rejection, making Cyril surprised. Foal admitted she really lost because of seeing this extraordinary scene. Her attitude made Cyril feel Foal wanted to connect with people, but she couldn't and pushed away people who wanted to help, as if she knew she would die and was struggling to eliminate regrets. When seeing Foal there, Alforth asked what she was doing. Meanwhile, Alicia asked who the girl was and planned to tell Sophia that he was flirting with another girl. So, Cyril immediately introduced Foal, who was the student council president in the middle school division. Alicia felt interested after hearing she was the student council president. And knowing Cyril planned to join the student council, Alicia said her desire to join too with the reason to help Sophia and Cyril. But Foal couldn't because they didn't have job openings for the student council. But Alforth felt it didn't matter because he heard Foal was the only member in the student council, even though normally there were 5 to 6 people there. Cyril was anxious with Alforth's action, especially when he asked to join the student council. Foal still refused, but Alforth didn't give up and said that by joining the student council, he could improve his reputation. Then, Cyril told the prince that his action was considered as forcing entry into the student council using his position. Alforth apologized for that, while Alicia still expressed her desire, no matter her position in the student council. Noel looked hesitant, not because of hate, but because she didn't want to be a burden in the future. Because she was left in a safe place without danger. She felt this decision was for Sophia and Foal's good, so Cyril said wasn't it okay, because the more the merrier. His words made Foal grin and call him a real bully. Cyril's class got an assignment from Tristan to write a report about the use of magic. To not look suspicious, Cyril decided to write a simple answer. When correcting, Tristan felt puzzled because Cyril's report looked lighter compared to the usual quality of his report, making the boy apologize to him. After discussing that, the man suddenly asked Cyril, who joined the student council, as well as Alicia and Alforth. But he didn't want to discuss that, but the upcoming culture festival. He was sure the boy would be busy with student council affairs, and because he was the class president, he asked him to determine a vice before being overwhelmed with student council tasks. Cyril was allowed to choose anyone by Tristan. After the conversation, suddenly Luke asked what Cyril was talking about with Tristan. Cyril said he was asked to determine a class vice president. Luke understood because Cyril would be busy with student council affairs. That's when, suddenly Chloe hit his head, making the boy protest. Meanwhile, Chloe scolded him for saying about that. Cyril said that not everyone knew Cyril joined the student council, making Luke surprised. While Cyril knew the boy must know from his secret master or teacher. When Luke reasoned he heard from other students, Cyril instead mocked because he wasn't convincing. After that, Cyril revealed that he was thinking of making Luke the vice president. However, he also wasn't too sure and asked Chloe to supervise him. However, Luke asked him not to worry because he would be a good vice. He even had a child suitable to be his assistant, Raymond. Luke said that the boy regretted what happened before and had become a capable person. Cyril finally agreed and said Luke would be his vice after the boy was busy with his affairs in the student council. He also told Luke to make sure his assistant really wanted the job. Luke grinned and asked Cyril to leave it to him. Meanwhile, in the student council room, Foal looked not paying attention to them. Cyril felt the wind magic she emitted, making him think if she suffered from magic power overload like Sophia. Foal's servant then awakened her with a pinch. Realizing they all were there, Foal then welcomed them. She also said that there was no work for them, so they could relax. That's when Cyril raised his hand to ask, making Foal advise him not to need to raise his hand because they were equal here. That's when, suddenly, Alicia said it meant they all were friends here. Even though they were different, from Cyril to the student council president. Her action made Cyril and Melissa feel anxious. Then, Foal asked what Cyril's question was. The boy asked why Foal always worked on documents, even though there was no work. Foal said what she wrote was a diary. She explained they had to handle small jobs, but it didn't require much reading. Especially approaching the culture festival, there wouldn't be much work. She also said the student council was treated like a royal noble here, so they could also go home if bored. Then, Sophia asked what other members usually did in the past. Foal suddenly remembered there was a room there. When opened, the room was very dirty. Foal's servant, Leah, apologized for leaving the room unsupervised, making Foal say that she didn't need to apologize. However, Leah reasoned because Foal didn't apologize, then the responsibility was on the servant. That's when Cyril realized Leah was indirectly blaming Foal. So Foal apologized to them. Because of that, Alicia suggested to tidy up the room and clean it. The suggestion made their servants anxious, including Cyril, who said he couldn't let a noble's daughter do cleaning, asking them to leave this to the boy. However, Sophia refused because they were equal, so they would help. Cyril felt this was good because they were excited with the first job as student council, but he felt it wasn't right to let a prince and nobles clean in public. So, he said he would tidy up books and so on, then they looked for notes inside. Alicia agreed with the suggestion, while other servants felt relieved. When entering the room, Cyril used his magic to show his ability as a true butler. When leaving the room, Alicia asked about his cleaning work. Cyril said he had finished it. When Alicia entered, she was surprised because the room was already very clean, so were the servants who peeked from the door. So, they looked at the documents there. Alicia didn't expect it was a heavier job than she thought. That's when Sophia found documents about the student council that usually held performances at the cultural festival up to 3 years ago. Sophia felt acting sounded fun, especially building more achievements in the student council would help her achieve her main goal. So Cyril couldn't stop Sophia because she wanted it. So he conveyed to them to bring back the tradition in their way. Alicia and Alforth agreed, so did Foal. But Cyril felt they needed a script, and coincidentally Foal had a script that they might use. The script told a love story of a prince and a girl, and the prince's fiancée who was sentenced to death for excessively hurting the girl. When seeing the familiar title and story, Cyril felt anxious because it was the story from the Otome game he played in his previous life. When Foal asked Cyril's opinion about the script, Cyril responded neutrally, even though he felt suspicious of Foal's female tutor, who might be a reincarnated person. She could have written this. Foal then told that her tutor wrote it some time ago and wanted to hear their opinion if there was a problem with the script. However, Cyril doubted it and still thought if her tutor was a reincarnated person or not. Cyril said there was no problem with the cast because it was enough. However, he felt the purpose of this script was like to find other reincarnated people. He wondered if Foal was also a reincarnated student, so he understood why she didn't appear in the game even though talented. But Cyril still had too little information, and he felt better to be more careful. After that, they arranged the cast and suddenly, Sophia wanted to play as a villainess. The request made Foal surprised, Sophia puzzled seeing the reaction. Even though Cyril knew this was like in the original story, but now his lady was rumored as a holy maiden who didn't have an image as a villainess. Foal felt it didn't matter because she agreed. Then she started pointing for other casts until all were determined. After that, she invited them to practice their acting skills for now. However, Alicia felt it would be difficult to practice alone, so she suggested asking an acting teacher from Kakwendo Gakuen. However, Foal said as far as she knew, their school didn't have an acting teacher. Therefore, she suggested asking for private lessons from Cyril. Cyril was confused why his name was mentioned. Foal reasoned because his Injiki looked good, but unfortunately Cyril didn't have knowledge about Injiki theater. When Sophia asked Cyril who could handle it, making Cyril anxious. Sophia asked Cyril to think calmly. She also hoped they would bring a professional acting coach, while Cyril guided them in the initial preparation. Cyril understood Sophia's meaning because he always taught his lady first before to professional teachers. So he accepted it. However, Foal said she was just joking earlier, especially Cyril didn't know anything about acting. Cyril agreed, but he would prepare quickly so he could learn and teach everything. He asked them to give 3 days' time. Then, that night, at the Rosenberg Marquiate Manor. When walking in the hallway, Sophia found Cyril who asked other servants to put books about acting on his library table. He also asked them to contact people from the local theater troupe to observe their practice. Seeing Cyril working hard, Sophia asked Rush to ask him to meet Sophia when Cyril wasn't busy. After that, Cyril came to Sophia's room and asked why she called him. However, suddenly Sophia rampaged and asked why Cyril never looked at her. Cyril felt this was familiar and showed too deep sadness and control. However, this time he didn't know what his mistake was. Cyril immediately said that it wasn't true because he did everything for Sophia and always thought of her. The answer made Sophia mock because it wasn't the dialogue said by the prince in the script. Cyril, who was anxious, felt stupid after knowing it was just a line from that stupid performance. He apologized for that to Sophia. Then, the girl asked if Cyril was serious with his words earlier. Cyril confirmed because he was Sophia's trusted servant. Then, the boy asked if Sophia had remembered the entire script. The girl answered she had remembered even though only her part. It made Cyril feel amazed because she did it in a short time. Sophia also admitted she was surprised because all her lines came out naturally like flying around her head. Sophia thought maybe because she sympathized with the character, while Cyril knew it was because the girl was connected with the villainess. Sophia asked Cyril's opinion about her acting. The butler praised her. When Sophia asked if there was something that could be developed, Cyril asked her to emphasize her sadness and grief. When Sophia did it, Cyril immediately looked away, making the girl wonder. Cyril said nothing, even though he felt the execution after seeing Sophia's acting that really matched the original story. After that, they started doing other acting scenes together. Sophia asked Rush how about their acting. Rush said honestly that their acting was perfect as the villainess and her butler. However, their acting also looked like a pair of ill-fated lovers because of status differences. She also said they both accidentally used real names. Rush's words immediately made them both embarrassed until Cyril asked to take a break from practice for a while. Sophia expressed her admiration for Cyril's acting talent. Cyril also praised Sophia's acting. Then, the girl revealed her sympathy for Elvil. She imagined being in her position and was sure she would be so angry and jealous like Elvil. Cyril understood because Elvil was basically a version of Sophia raised differently. Sophia apologized because her words sounded strange, but Cyril felt it wasn't strange and promised not to do something that would make her jealous because he was her personal butler. Suddenly Sophia felt Cyril like bullying her, making the butler anxious. Cyril then asked what made his lady pursue acting. Sophia admitted because it helped her fulfill her goal. Then she said the part she wanted most was to be on stage with Cyril. So, she felt disappointed because Cyril wasn't on stage to play. Cyril then asked why Sophia chose the villainous role, even though she was more suitable to be the heroine. Sophia felt the role didn't suit her. Besides, the prince wouldn't be on the same stage with her. The next day, Luke announced to Cyril's classmates that he would be busy with student council tasks, and he became the class vice president during the cultural festival. So, he decided to choose a class project and asked them to give their ideas. The students there were excited, while Raymond expressed his annoyance because Cyril wasn't the president now. Cyril asked if Raymond wasn't happy working under Luke. Raymond didn't mean that, but because Cyril's team members from the welcome party praised him so much. So, he hoped to experience the same as them. Cyril asked him not to worry because Luke was his assistant during the party, so he must have learned from Cyril. Raymond was excited and felt by observing Luke, he would learn everything too. So, he left and helped Luke. Cyril felt happy because he didn't need to worry about them. On the day after school, Cyril was in an acting practice session with Alicia. When he wanted to say goodbye to Sophia, the The girl suddenly came out of her script and was immediately corrected by Cyril. Sophia felt annoyed, then repeated it, making Cyril realize that his lady wasn't acting. Cyril couldn't just look at Sophia because it would make him unable to protect his lady from outside dangers. That was also the reason he needed to look at others more. Especially, Sophia also wanted Cyril to give acting training to Alicia. Cyril asked again what was wrong with Sophia. Sophia then discussed about the last scene, when the kiss between the prince and the heroine. Especially, Cyril would do the scene with Alicia. When hearing that, the butler panicked. Then he reminded Sophia that Alicia played as a maid. Hearing that made Sophia surprised. She felt strange because she thought the girl was her heroine. The words made Cyril worry that Sophia had memories about the timeline in the game and felt the need to be more careful. After that, he said goodbye to Sophia because he couldn't make Alicia wait. He asked if he was allowed to go. Sophia felt Cyril seemed would stand there if she didn't go, so the girl turned around, then told Cyril to come back quickly. In the practice room, Cyril was surprised when seeing Alicia wearing modern clothes. He asked what Alicia was wearing. The girl said it was a gym uniform and tracksuit. That's when Cyril just remembered in this world with noble environment still had modern aspects. Even though he felt strange seeing a noble wearing a tracksuit. When Alicia asked if she looked strange, Cyril felt she looked ideal because it fit with the magic hour. That's when Cyril got a sharp gaze from Melissa. After that, they started the acting practice. After the practice finished, Cyril asked Alicia to fix her posture and vocal. When seeing Melissa's face, Cyril asked if something was wrong. Melissa then admitted this was the first time she saw Alicia's rapid progress in a short time, making her feel Cyril was suitable to be the girl's tutor. However, Alicia scolded her because her servant doubted what Sophia had said before. However, Cyril felt it didn't matter because it made sense to doubt someone like the butler as a good tutor. Her attitude made Melissa wonder if Cyril was really 12 years old, making the boy immediately freeze. After that, they returned to practice. Cyril felt his acting was just decent even though he remembered the dialogue, different from Sophia's perfect acting ability. Their practice continued, but when the part where the butler and villainess did evil, suddenly Alicia refused that they both would do something very cruel. Cyril advised that this was just acting, making Alicia apologize. After that, Cyril asked how Alicia felt after her first acting practice. Alicia admitted she was very difficult. Alicia felt very difficult because she felt her heroine was very strange. Alicia felt the heroine looked pretending to be innocent and stealing the prince from Elville. The words made Cyril disbelieve because it was the same as Alicia insulting herself. Then, Cyril asked if she would give up if becoming the heroine. Alicia answered no. Cyril asked then how she would act if her crush had a fiancé. Alicia knew it would require a lot of strength. That's why she felt the heroine who seduced the prince when Elville wasn't there as an affair. It made Cyril remember Alicia, who invited him to dance in front of everyone when Sophia was by his side. He felt maybe that was the girl's meaning. Alicia then said, if it was her, then she would challenge them in a duel, making Cyril and Melissa surprised. Cyril wanted to say for her not to do that, but he couldn't say it. When training Alforth, Cyril felt annoyed when the prince instead came out of the script and called Sophia's name. He scolded Alforth if they both were different people. However, Alforth still didn't care because Sophia still looked beautiful even when playing as a side character. Even though Cyril understood, but he asked the prince to still pay attention to his role well. Then, he also felt Foal looked very cute, but Alforth reacted normally. Cyril understood the reaction because they both were cousins. After that, they returned to practice. Cyril did tutor sessions until 1 month passed. Now, Cyril was in the student council room, making Foal confused since when he was there. Cyril reasoned Foal who allowed him earlier. The girl protested the butler who always called her as Lady Foal. Cyril apologized, then called her as Her Highness Princess Faltjunia. The words made her silent. Foal asked Leah because she felt becoming a student as an adopted child of Earl. Cyril told the information was very hidden, even though not too difficult to find. So, Foal didn't have reason to evade. She then asked if Cyril had told Sophia about this. Knowing Cyril didn't tell her, made Foal puzzled because a butler should tell his lady. Cyril reasoned it was the best choice. Especially he knew Foal preferred Sophia not knowing it. Foal said that Cyril's words were true and praised him as a smart person as talked about. However, Cyril didn't know how to call Foal now. Foal suggested calling her Miss Foal. Cyril agreed, making Foal puzzled, especially the boy already knew their identities. Cyril felt that it was normal to fulfill a request from a princess. After that, Foal asked why Cyril was here today. Cyril said his arrival was to report about their performance practice. He reported Sophia, who had no problem, but Alforth and Alicia still had difficulties. Foal felt not surprised because they both weren't suitable for acting from the beginning. However, Cyril said their problem was only in staying in character. Seeing Foal, who didn't look worried, he felt maybe Foal didn't know anything about this game. However, he wondered why the script writer was looking for other reincarnators. This made Cyril more alert because he didn't know their motivations. That's when they then started discussing to overcome this problem. Foal suggested making them concentrate on creating roles for themselves. So, Foal asked if Cyril knew a good place to be their training camp because it was perfect to build characters in a short time. She would also try to convince Alforth's parents, while Cyril planned to discuss with Sophia and Sophia's father. After the discussion, Cyril then wondered because Foal previously tried to avoid contact with others. Foal admitted that, but since she was involved, she wanted to stay involved. Then, Foal asked again if Cyril knew a good place for training camp. Cyril suddenly remembered a place in the game, where Libert and Alicia went to a summer resort for etiquette training. The place was also not too far from the academy, but he thought about how to explain it. However, he still told by suggesting to Foal to ask Libert. When Foal felt hesitant because Cyril wanted to work with the populists, Cyril convinced her by saying that they were already at peace after the last tea party. Cyril felt he could use this to build further relationships. So, finally Foal agreed with the idea. After they were there, Sophia was surprised because there was a beautiful place like this in the capital. While the servants there welcomed Alforth's arrival together with the others with thanks. Alicia felt the welcome was very dramatic, making her wonder if they weren't burdening. Cyril confirmed, but he asked Alicia not to worry. When Alicia commented on Libert's family reputation that was increasingly rising because of this, suddenly Libert's father, the chairman of the Liqueur Merchant Association, came to welcome them and thanked. Alforth also thanked because he accepted their request, then asked if Libert's father would also stay with them. The man said he would stay at a villa around there and asked them not to hesitate to ask about anything. After that, they were shown their rooms. When entering the place, Cyril felt even though the Liqueur Association was commoners, this place could be misunderstood as a noble mansion. Suddenly, he remembered the story in the game when Alicia's father approved his child with a commoner, Libert, because their families were equal. He then thought about love that couldn't overcome every obstacle in society. Cyril didn't know why suddenly he thought about that after being there. He also no longer cared about death flags, feeling he just needed to focus as Sophia's personal butler and ensure this performance would be very successful. At that time, he asked Alforth and Alicia to the practice room after finishing unpacking because they would start working on characterization as soon as possible. Sophia was surprised because they just arrived, but Cyril already wanted to start. Cyril also knew they might be tired, so he wouldn't force. However, Alforth felt that Cyril was right. Then, Alforth and Alicia were excited to start it. Cyril felt very strange when seeing now Alforth also wore a tracksuit. And when seeing Sophia's tracksuit, he also felt her clothes looked contrasting with her face. Sophia asked if it looked strange on her, but Cyril praised her as usual. Honestly, he also felt his lady looked fluffy compared to usual. After that, they started acting practice with Foal and Alforth. Cyril felt the prince's acting was better, but he felt still lacking compared to Foal's acting. After that, they continued practice with Foal and Alicia. At that time, Cyril felt Alicia's acting was also lacking compared to Foal. Even Foal also realized it. The girl realized that Alicia felt disgusted playing the role because the maid tried to make the heroine meet the prince even though already engaged. Alicia felt amazed because Foal could realize that. However, she also advised her not to try to agree with her actions and just run the role as a maid who supported her master. Meanwhile, Cyril started thinking back about the game, where even though he felt sympathy for the villainess's backstory, he never thought that the heroine's actions were wrong because from the player's perspective, the prince experienced coercion from his fiancée's parents. He knew that political marriage was common in this world, but marrying someone loved could also happen. So, he switched to advising Alicia about her role, but Alicia still felt that it was wrong. However, Cyril said the heroine still experienced love and guilty feelings. Then, he said even though it was forbidden love, if giving up, then it couldn't be called love. He then said if giving up, then her desire wouldn't be realized. Cyril's words immediately made Sophia turn and glare at him. After hearing those words, Alicia immediately asked Foal to practice again. Then after their practice finished at night, Cyril was at the beach. At that time, Sophia approached him, making Cyril ask why she was here. Sophia said she was here because her butler was outside. When her butler was silent, Sophia asked if everything was okay. Cyril immediately apologized because Sophia's beauty distracted him, making the girl immediately embarrassed. After that, Sophia revealed about Cyril's words during the practice to Alicia because the boy already knew Alicia's feelings, but still said that. Sophia wondered about Cyril's reason for saying that to her. Cyril admitted he did it because his duty as Sophia's butler who had to do anything to grant his lady's request. Suddenly, others also came. It was Foal. Cyril called Foal with the call Miss Foal, making Sophia flustered and wondering if Cyril could call her without titles later. Foal, who was there, said she felt worried because she didn't find them both. Cyril apologized for that and offered to return. However, Foal asked him to wait a moment because she wanted to convey something to Sophia. She said an apology to her for being provocative when she first came to the student council. However, Sophia understood if Foal had a certain reason. Foal felt because she didn't have long lifetime, but still selfish by being friends with them all. But Sophia didn't care because she wouldn't regret being Foal's friend. After resting Foal in her room, Leah came to the living room where they gathered. She explained that Foal had a fatal condition that surprised everyone, including Alforth, who was her cousin. When Cyril asked the name of her condition, Leah couldn't answer. Cyril understood because mana-supercharged patients were viewed like mentally ill people. Leah said the doctor estimated Foal wouldn't last until graduation or less than 6 months. The information surprised them all and made them not continue practice after that. It became their last day of training camp. After that, in the horse carriage, Sophia called Cyril, then didn't say anything. Cyril told Sophia that it was impossible to treat Foal even though they used various available resources. However, Sophia didn't accept, especially Foal was just a commoner. That's when Cyril said that his lady was wrong because Foal was Princess Fault Junia. The information made Sophia wonder why Cyril didn't tell her about her status as a royal noble and her condition. Cyril said that he felt this was the best because he felt Sophia would treat Foal differently. However, he knew that his action was wrong, therefore, Cyril apologized to her. Sophia asked him to raise his head. She didn't mind because Cyril did it because thinking about Sophia first. Sophia's self-confidence made Cyril feel amazed, and the girl said this was all thanks to the butler. That's when Cyril realized Sophia held his sleeve. When scolded, she apologized because unaware and wanted to release it. But Cyril prevented it. He then said that he would always be by her side and promised to always be there forever until his death, unless Sophia asked him to go. The words made Sophia touched and hugged Cyril, while Roosh, who was there, pretended not to see. After the holiday, Foal still hadn't returned to the student council room. Then, suddenly Alicia had an idea to visit her, making the three of them simultaneously stare at her silently, making the girl wonder. Sophia understood Alicia's meaning, but they didn't know where she lived. Cyril, of course, knew Foal lived in the royal palace and didn't want them to find her. However, suddenly Alforth agreed with her words. So in the end they went to the royal palace because Foal lived in the same place as the prince. Alicia's late surprise made Cyril feel that she was too late because they had a bigger problem now. Cyril then calmed Alicia because Foal wouldn't be angry at her. When entering the place, Cyril was surprised to see his two friends, Chloe and Luke, who apparently served Foal. Chol explained that she needed to divide them into smaller groups even though she had asked permission to enter. They didn't mind that. Then, Sophia and Cyril became the first to visit Foal. The girl felt happy to be visited by them. She then apologized for making them scared that day and involving them. Sophia wondered why she said that. Foal felt because she didn't have long lifetime, but still selfish by being friends with them all. But Sophia didn't care because she wouldn't regret being Foal's friend. Even if she went back to the past, she would still be friends with Foal. Foal thanked because she didn't expect Sophia would say it. Then she explained that it felt heavy sometimes, but she would rise again. She also said she wanted to join the performance. Sophia felt it would worsen her condition, but Foal insisted because she just wanted to prove her existence. Initially, she felt a diary was enough, but after seeing Cyril and Sophia's performance, She wanted to leave something that filled people's hearts. Sophia understood that, then invited her to perform it together. Fol was happy to hear that because Luke and Chloe always canceled because of her health. When Cyril said that servants' duty was to fulfill their master's wishes, Luke confirmed, but also their duty to ensure their master's health. After that, Luke asked Sophia to leave because being there too long could affect Fol's health. When they were about to leave, suddenly Fol said to Cyril that her tutor looked interested in meeting him. Before answering, Cyril asked about the tutor to Fol. He asked if the person was a good person, but Fol instead said that her view of her tutor was the same as Sophia's view of Cyril. When asked the reason why her tutor was interested in Cyril, Fol just answered because they both looked similar to him. Knowing that, Cyril concluded they both were reincarnators similar to him. After discussing the possibility if Cyril could meet her tutor, Fol promised to arrange their meeting after the cultural festival. Cyril knew. It meant 2 weeks later finally everything was revealed. Glaive, Lord of House Rosenberg, called Cyril to his room. He said he wanted to discuss something, starting from the king who sent an unofficial request, namely that their performance must be successful. After that, he also warned Cyril to hold back more. Cyril asked if he shouldn't play in the performance, but Glaive didn't mean that. He told the butler that his actions were too far and attracted the royal family. He explained that this was more than him being Alforth's tutor. Cyril wondered if he had done something that offended them. However, Glaive told him that he instead made them interested in him. Cyril appreciated the advice and determined to ensure the performance was successful behind the scenes. 2 weeks later, they still practiced even though Fol didn't come. Cyril observed Alforth, who had developed drastically, but Alicia still had problems with her role. Alicia reasoned that she couldn't sympathize with her heroine, even though she knew the heroine couldn't give up for her love. It made Cyril surprised because his words didn't help Alicia enter her character, making him think he might have made everything worse. However, Alicia said maybe she was better at playing as a villainess. After that, she showed her acting as a villainess that surprised Cyril until silent, while Sophia praised Alicia's acting as a villainess. However, Alicia felt her acting wasn't comparable to Sophia and apologized, while Sophia asked her not to apologize and instead offered to switch roles. However, Alicia refused because she couldn't make someone like Sophia play as a maid. However, Cyril felt it was a good idea because the more Alicia sympathized with her character, the better the performance would be. Alicia immediately apologized because she caused problems, but Sophia felt it didn't matter. She thought they were the ones at fault for forcing her into a role she didn't want. After that, they started again. After the practice, Cyril concluded that Alicia was suitable to be a villainess and heroine. It made Sophia think there was nothing wrong with her acting. So, she suggested changing her heroine and rewriting the lines and changing the personality. She also felt Fol might not mind adapting to this change because it was worth trying. After that, Sophia started acting, Alicia followed, while Cyril watched them both. Cyril knew Alicia felt that stealing the prince's heart wasn't right, but because the idea now came from the heroine's own choice, the girl could support it. Cyril asked Sophia wasn't this instead making the heroine look like another villainess, but the girl disagreed. She reasoned the villainess started doing crimes and ended in disaster for herself, but she wouldn't make such a mistake. Even though Cyril understood, he felt her heroine felt more evil than the villainess. That's when Libert excused himself and entered the room with some people. He was there to give their costumes for the performance. Sophia asked if she could wear it now. Libert allowed because that was the purpose of bringing it here. He also asked them not to be afraid to ask anything to him. Meanwhile, Cyril noticed there was his costume there too, making him wonder why he needed it because he was only the narrator. Libert said it was his apology to Cyril and Sophia. However, Cyril felt wasn't it only to deceive the elitists. However, Libert felt it still didn't change the fact that he showed himself hostile to them. That's why he apologized as much as possible. Cyril asked him to raise his head. He understood Libert's reason for apologizing, but he wondered why with a uniform. Libert just asked Cyril to consider it as intuition. After trying it, Cyril felt it fit very well even though Libert never measured him. It made him amazed with true craftsmanship ability. Then, he knocked on the women's changing door and asked if Sophia was okay. The girl said, even allowed him to enter to see, but Cyril immediately refused. However, when hearing Alicia also allowed because she had finished, finally Cyril opened it. They asked how they looked and Cyril answered they both looked perfect. However, the The two girls doubted. Then Sophia asked between them both, who looked prettier in her costume. Cyril answered they both looked perfect in their respective costumes, making them both confused. After Cyril explained, they both understood. After finishing and Cyril walking to the horse carriage with Sophia, suddenly his lady pulled his wrist cloth. When Cyril asked if something was wrong, Sophia said she forgot to say something, namely Cyril, who looked very handsome in his costume. Cyril then asked Sophia to hold his hand. Then he pulled the girl. Cyril then advised his lady not to ask heavy questions in front of everyone, because Cyril felt that the cutest one was Sophia, while Rosh pretended not to see when in the horse carriage. At the tea party, a Tea Party member said everyone was talking about the student council's performance lately. However, she regretted Cyril, who was only the narrator. Cyril felt he was just a butler and wouldn't be on stage and take the spotlight from Sophia. However, she felt not so and asked Sophia. However, the girl's response was different from usual, making her anxious. So was Cyril, because not receiving praise was an improper action of the host, especially from a marquis. So, Cyril invited her to rest and ended the tea party. Cyril asked again if his lady was okay. However, he was still suspicious even though Sophia said she was fine. So, he brought his lady to the garden and sat to rest. Cyril appreciated Sophia's action, who wanted to maintain her father's dignity. But he asked his lady not to pretend for his good. Sophia was angry with that, but Cyril said the girl was 3 years too young to lie to him. Sophia finally admitted, even though then puzzled why she said 3 years, not 100 years. Cyril reasoned Sophia would understand after 3 years older. Then, he asked what Sophia's problem was. Sophia said that she was worried about Foal and wondered what if she didn't return. She didn't know what to do. That's when Cyril was about to offer his lady, but Sophia refused until scolding him. Sophia was surprised because she didn't mean to, she just didn't want to cause problems for Cyril. That's when Sophia's body was out of control because of the mana supercharged syndrome attack. She couldn't let people see her and decided to absorb Sophia's magic. Cyril then told her not to worry because he was there for her anytime. However, Sophia didn't want to cause problems for Cyril. However, Cyril instead felt Sophia never caused problems and promised to do what Sophia wanted. Sophia asked if she was no longer a child, but she never could catch up if always sheltered by him. Sophia explained she had a determined goal and became the reason to make the performance successful for Foal. After the discussion, they then went to the student council room. There, Foal was already with Leah. Foal's presence made Sophia feel happy and asked what happened to her and why she was here even though she should rest at home. Foal said she was already at home this morning and just came in the afternoon. When Sophia asked if she was okay, Foal still answered, but she said her condition. When Alforth and Alicia, who just came, asked the same, Foal just answered, but didn't say her condition. When in the practice room, Cyril still had a week before the festival, and they only needed to give a touch at the end. So, he had invited a professional artist named Isabella. Alforth and Foal were surprised Cyril employed Isabella, who was known as a famous actress in the kingdom. Isabella introduced herself politely to them. Alforth asked her not to be formal with them. After that, Isabella changed her attitude to casual very quickly to them. Cyril thought the attitude change showed that she trusted Alforth. After that, Isabella asked them to practice their acting. She also said she wouldn't tolerate half-hearted acting. After that, they started their acting from Sophia and Foal's scene. Their acting surprised Isabella and made her praise them. Sophia kept practicing in her room. Cyril said tomorrow was a big day and she had to rest. But Sophia felt this wasn't just about being a good actress, because she felt understanding Evil's feelings and her wrong method. Cyril asked if that meant Sophia justified Evil. However, Sophia said killing the heroine wouldn't make the prince love her. She felt Evil should develop herself first and gain people's trust. She also was sure she fell into the path of crime because late realizing it. She also promised not to make the same mistake no matter what way she would use to get her goal. So, Sophia asked Cyril to support her at that time. Cyril promised because he was her personal butler. And after that, in the morning, the festival started.
Cyril felt relieved because everything had gone according to plan. Meanwhile, Chloe apologized for making him help them even though he was busy with the student council. Cyril said it was no problem because he was also in this class. However, Chloe's reaction of staying silent made him ask if something was wrong. Chloe said she was just thinking that Cyril might find this a bit basic. Cyril confirmed that their project looked similar to other classes. He saw this as perfect for showing good service, and he had also made crepes the menu. The crepe matter was handled between him, Libert, Luke, and Raymond, especially since countless nobles would come to the festival. Luke also felt this would be a golden opportunity to show what they had made. Even Raymond asked them to believe and not repeat the same mistake twice. After explaining, Cyril then asked Chloe. He asked if Chloe had romantic feelings for Luke, but she immediately got offended. Then, he wanted to ask about her mentor, but Chloe didn't want to tell him who it was. Cyril understood that and started remembering Foal, who thought very highly of him. So, he thought whether Chloe had romantic feelings for her mentor, making Chloe answer again that it wasn't funny. Cyril confirmed and apologized for being rude, so he would leave now. However, just as he was about to leave, Chloe grabbed his wrist. The girl asked what he was really looking for, while Cyril acted innocent. But Chloe knew the butler was lying. She also found it strange that Cyril had asked such a stupid question earlier. However, the butler didn't want to answer her, so Chloe couldn't let him go. However, Cyril told her not to worry because he wouldn't hurt Foal since Sophia trusted him. He also had no intention of hurting her lady Chloe. The girl then released him, but she wouldn't forgive him if Cyril was lying. When glancing at his class, Cyril felt happy because they were preparing well. Meanwhile, Tristan, who appeared, immediately asked him why he was secretly watching them. Cyril reasoned that it was because he was also a student here. However, Tristan felt that if they did something wrong, Cyril would definitely scold them. But Cyril felt that was Tristan's job. He was also more curious about what Tristan wanted from him. Tristan came to convey his thanks, especially since Foal had been much happier these past few days because of him. Cyril reasoned that he did it because Sophia liked the girl. When the atmosphere fell silent, suddenly Cyril asked if Tristan liked tea. Tristan then revealed that he had heard Cyril could make some great teas and asked where he learned it. Cyril answered that he learned it himself and would teach him if he wanted. Tristan offered for Cyril to make it for him when he could. He felt there was no need to be taught. However, Cyril refused because he only served his lady. Tristan protested because Cyril treated him like a stranger, making the boy finally accept, but only this once. Tristan then invited him to make some after the cultural festival. He would make sure to drink Cyril's famous milk tea. Cyril understood and left the timing to Tristan. After that, he went to the auditorium for the Student Council Junior Division drama performance. While watching the stage, Cyril felt there was nothing wrong and no one was hurt after checking twice. He was surprised when Isabella suddenly came and asked him about this stage. Cyril said it looked really good and thanked her for preparing it in a short time. However, he was curious why Isabella was there when the performance hadn't started yet. Isabella said a professional had to check the equipment before working. She also felt she was part of the team even though she wasn't on stage, but she also asked if Cyril still saw her as an outsider. However, Isabella explained that wasn't the issue and apologized for her rudeness. She was just joking, but she still informed him that previously she hadn't taken this seriously because the woman would take care of a spoiled noble and try to find a patron for herself. Isabella explained that she came from an unknown poor village. All the villagers were very kind to her, and when she left to study acting, they supported her. Cyril asked if that meant the woman sent money to them as thanks. Cyril remembered he had learned that Isabel was a commoner when he saw her background, so she wasn't lying. Isabella asked if Cyril doubted her. Cyril apologized for that. Isabella felt there was no need to apologize for being a servant who worried about her master, especially since Sophia and Cyril were close. Then, she began explaining an anonymous note that asked her to sabotage the performance to embarrass Sophia. However, Isabella refused it, but she wanted Cyril to know. Cyril thanked her for that. He also guessed it must be one of the elitists. After that, he offered Isabella to work together with him because of Isabella's connections and wisdom. Specifically, he wanted Isabella to give him information and act normal. Hearing Isabella immediately agree surprised him. Isabella reasoned she did it because she trusted Cyril. She told him to consult her if he needed anything, then left and said not to expect her to be nice to Sophia. Those words shocked Cyril, and when he turned around, he found Sophia. The girl accused Cyril of apparently liking older women like Isabella. However, Cyril explained this wasn't what it looked like. Meanwhile, Sophia said she would grow a few more years, making Cyril tease her. After that, the two of them checked the items for the last time. While checking the items, Cyril said Sophia was lucky to be able to meet Foal again. Sophia felt the same. She also asked Cyril not to feel guilty for hiding Foal's identity from her. The girl was grateful her butler did that. But right now, she only wanted this performance to be successful and asked for Cyril's help to do it. Of course, Cyril would do it for his lady. He prepared to fulfill all her wishes on the first day the cultural festival began. However, even so, Foal was not where he was supposed to be. When break time arrived and shifts changed, the children from the servant class planned to watch Cyril's performance. However, Raymond didn't join because he would stay there to keep watch. But his male friend felt they should support him because Cyril was their classmate. However, Raymond felt that with Cyril there, nothing would go wrong. However, backstage, Sophia was panicking because Foal hadn't arrived. Meanwhile, Cyril had already guessed the reason. Alforth asked Kellen, Alforth's butler, to ask Tristan. However, Cyril felt they didn't need to know the information because they all knew Foal had relapsed again. He asked them not to worry because Foal would get better after a few days, especially since his tutor said Foal would be fine until the end of the festival. The problem now was that because he relapsed, he couldn't perform. Alforth asked who could become the heroine. Cyril felt it was impossible to perform without a heroine. Then, Sophia insisted on still performing and offered to become the heroine. Meanwhile, the villainess could be played by Alicia. Sophia felt Alicia's acting as a villainess was amazing and wanted her to perform it. At that moment, Melissa also spoke up, saying Alicia liked playing as a villainess and studied it every chance she got. She was also sure Alicia's performance would be perfect. After being convinced by Melissa, Alicia decided to play as the villainess. When Alforth asked if Cyril would play as the maid, Cyril instead thought Melissa would replace, but the woman immediately shook her head. At that moment, Isabella came and offered. She had even memorized the dialogue. However, Cyril was still hesitant because Isabella was not a student. At that moment, Tristan appeared and allowed Isabella to participate. After that, he also informed them that Foal was resting because he felt unwell. However, he asked them not to worry because he only needed rest. He also conveyed Foal's message apologizing for not being on stage and entrusting it to them. Because of those words, they decided to practice in the remaining time. Meanwhile, Tristan, who was watching, felt amazed by their acting. Cyril felt honored by the praise, but he felt Tristan should watch over Foal now. However, Tristan repeated that Foal would be healthy in a day. Then, Cyril asked if their tea party had been planned. Tristan confirmed. When the last scene arrived, as Alforth was about to kiss Sophia, Cyril felt very conflicted even though making Sophia the game's heroine had been his dream. When Roosh told them to quickly change costumes, as Alforth stepped down from the stage, he stared at Cyril. Tristan asked if Alforth wanted something, but Cyril thought Tristan was asking him. However, Tristan said he wasn't asking him. Meanwhile, Alforth continued and told Cyril that they needed to talk. When performance time arrived, there were enthusiastic audiences and some who mocked their performance. When the performance started, people were surprised by Sophia's acting. Some even forgot she was acting. After that, Alforth's voice as the narrator was heard, surprising everyone, including Sophia. Meanwhile, the one who became the prince was Cyril. During the love scene, Sophia really blushed, making Cyril not expect it. When Cyril was about to leave the stage, Sophia suddenly pulled his wrist cloth. She asked Cyril to dance. Cyril obeyed her. During that scene, Cyril also explained why he could become the prince. Alforth handed the role to Cyril because he was the person Sophia trusted the most. He accepted it because he didn't want to end up like Evil, who was selfish and didn't care about people until it caused big problems. Sophia felt she would thank Alforth, but Cyril felt they should focus on dancing first. At that moment, Sophia said she didn't want the spotlight only for herself, but she wanted to shine together with Cyril. They danced until the audience praised their performance. And when their dance ended, the audience applauded them. After that, The performance continued to the scene where the two of them introduced themselves, making Cyril feel anxious because there were lines that weren't in the script. Meanwhile, in the scene where Aurelia cried over the prince who had a fiancé and she would make him happy, Isabella was able to play as his maid well. After that, it continued until the scene where Eville was angry and disappointed at Alfred, the prince. However, the dialogue Alicia delivered made the prince look like the villain here. At that moment, suddenly Alicia's scene went crazy, making the audience feel scared of her anger. The performance continued until the villainess tried to kill the heroine, and the prince managed to prevent it and punish her. In the last scene where the heroine gave the villainess a chance, Sophia instead made it clear that she loved the prince, making Cyril feel there would be an explosive fight. However, after that, the scene continued with the heroine asking the prince for forgiveness. The performance ended with the prince forgiving them, while the villainess still didn't give up, and neither did the heroine. After that, the scene continued where the heroine apologized, then continued with the kissing scene that was cut by the lights turning off. However, when he saw Tristan there as the culprit, Cyril had no other choice but to really act out kissing Sophia. After the successful first day, Sophia and Cyril visited Foal. Foal thanked them for visiting. He also apologized for making them worry and not being able to perform. However, he felt happy because Sophia became the heroine and asked if everything went smoothly. Cyril guessed Sophia was still shocked from yesterday, so he answered the question. And when Foal asked about the last scene, he answered that everything went according to plan even though someone made a mistake at the end. After that, Sophia handed over a paper containing the selection results and their performance was nominated. Foal was even more surprised when his name was there even though he wasn't on stage. However, Sophia felt it wasn't important because he was part of the student council. This performance also couldn't have been completed without him. That made Foal feel touched and thanked them for giving him beautiful last memories. Sophia advised him not to say that, but Foal was desperate because his illness was getting worse every day. However, Sophia asked him not to say things like that, then turned to Cyril. However, Sophia didn't continue her words. Cyril said his lady was underestimating him. Not long after they met, Sophia had already clung to him while crying. At that time, he trusted Sophia, so he also asked Sophia to trust him now. Sophia asked if the girl could make a selfish request. Cyril affirmed. So Sophia asked him to save Foal. Cyril obeyed that request. However, Foal said Cyril couldn't do it and not to lie to him because it would make Foal sicker. However, Cyril said he was serious about his words to save him. Unfortunately, Foal didn't believe it because his illness couldn't be cured by doctors in this kingdom, as his tutor said. Cyril knew his tutor was Tristan, making Foal surprised, as well as Sophia, who thought his tutor was a woman. Cyril explained that Tristan was looking for that butler so Foal wouldn't get too excited too quickly. Tristan, who came there, immediately apologized for the trouble he caused, but he asked him not to worry because Cyril could save him. However, Foal was puzzled because Tristan said he couldn't be saved. Tristan confirmed, but if it was Cyril, he could handle it. After that, they excused themselves to leave. Cyril felt annoyed about what Tristan actually wanted from him. This made Tristan annoyed because wasn't Cyril the one who said he would save Foal? He knew Tristan was looking for a reincarnator who could save Foal. However, he felt strange because he should have been looking for a doctor even though the chance of a reincarnator doctor was small. So, the two guessed that what was needed was someone with magic knowledge. He even now knew the purpose of their reincarnation, to save people who died in the story. He knew the two of them were very similar because Tristan was his older sister. In his previous life, Cyril's older sister recommended an Otome game to him. That was the game they were reincarnated into now. Tristan had already suspected that Cyril was her little brother. However, Cyril felt strange because Tristan sounded indifferent. Tristan apologized to him because even though she was still his older sister, she immediately became an adult when this happened. She had difficulty with two personalities mixing at the same time. She also asked since when Cyril realized it. Cyril reasoned he realized it since Sophia said that Foal had the same attitude as her. He also felt it was impossible for someone to write a script for the Espressivo Light and Darkness if they weren't a reincarnator. After realizing that, He started using Chloe and Luke to find information about reincarnators and led it to the suspicion of someone who didn't force him to save Foal and made him believe to save him himself. Cyril realized that was his older sister's habit. However, Tristan wondered how he knew that Foal's tutor was Tristan. Cyril knew it from Luke's behavior, which made him realize that Foal's tutor and their master were the same person. But one thing that made him sure the gender wasn't the same was by getting information from Chloe with stupid questions. Then drinking black tea with milk showed that Tristan knew his tea preference. After that, Cyril explained about Foal's illness, mana overcharge, but with a very special case. Tristan explained that his mana resistance was very high, so it was difficult to absorb even though he tried to reduce it by using small magic. Cyril understood the situation, but he was curious why Foal didn't release his own mana. Tristan said the reason he looked for another reincarnator was to find out that technique. Especially after checking other countries, they didn't have anything like that. His words shocked Cyril because after telling Sophia about mana overcharge and reporting to the Marquis and his father, they told him the way to release mana. When Tristan asked if something was wrong, Cyril said everything was fine, he just felt he had to investigate something now. However, he asked if Foal would be fine after he taught him how to release mana. Tristan was surprised because that meant Cyril accepted it. However, Cyril felt wouldn't it have been easier to consult him from the beginning? But Tristan reasoned he didn't know what it would be like if he asked directly. Especially since he was wary that Cyril planned to take the Marquis household and build a harem kingdom. Cyril didn't accept it, and when Tristan revealed the reason for his suspicion, it made Cyril explain that it was all a coincidence and he only wanted to make Sophia happy. However, Tristan felt he was very obvious because he even raised flags from the character in the eve of the festival. Cyril wondered. Tristan explained that it was the sequel to this game and asked him to change the topic if he had never played it. However, Cyril felt worried, making Tristan promise to tell him later because Foal was the top priority. After Cyril and Tristan returned, Sophia asked if it was possible to save Foal. Cyril confirmed it, then he asked if it was okay to explain his illness to Sophia. After getting permission from Foal, Cyril then said that Foal's illness was the same as the one Sophia suffered from. Those words shocked the three of them. However, Cyril said that he had already taught Sophia how to handle it. The butler also told them that no one else could do this technique except Sophia and Cyril. So, he asked Sophia to teach Foal how to use this technique. Cyril asked if Sophia was willing to teach Foal because Glaive asked him not to be too obvious. That statement immediately made Sophia lose control, shocking Cyril and making him ask her to release her mana. At that moment, Sophia managed to handle it, surprising Tristan and Foal. Sophia apologized for that, but Foal felt it was no problem because she showed that releasing mana was possible even though Cyril felt unsure. Then, Sophia asked if Cyril could give her some pointers first. Cyril said there was something he wanted to try, which was absorbing Foal's mana. However, Foal said all mages had failed. When Tristan said it was worth trying, Foal believed. After that, Cyril absorbed Foal's mana, then asked how he felt. Foal was surprised because the heat in his body had disappeared. Foal wondered if Cyril really absorbed his mana, and it was immediately confirmed by the butler. However, Foal still didn't believe it. Meanwhile, they left the room and left Foal alone. At that moment, Foal was very touched because he could live. Meanwhile, in Sophia's father's room, Sophia expressed that she felt very unhappy. Her father knew it must be because he asked Cyril not to be too conspicuous. Sophia felt annoyed because her father knew and it should have made this easy. Then she reminded him of their promise. Glaive remembered that promise, but he also told her the risk of Cyril getting credit for saving the princess. It could make the queen take the butler from them. Even if Sophia's plan succeeded, it would affect Glaive's plans. However, in the end, the man gave up and would make Cyril a noble. 2 years ago, 5 days before the prince's birthday party, Sophia told him that at the upcoming party, she chose Cyril as her escort. But Glaive refused because being escorted by someone outside the family would make her look like a potential fiancé. He couldn't let a butler be thought of as a potential fiancé because the status difference between Cyril and Sophia was too great. Sophia then asked so what she needed was only to make Cyril have the same status. She gave a bunch of papers containing plans to make Cyril a high-ranking noble. All her plans were detailed, but Glaive felt that wanting Cyril as a noble and to marry him were two different things. So, Sophia then offered information known by her and Cyril, information about magic that this kingdom had not yet learned and other knowledge such as tea and sweets. Sophia also asked if her father was sure about marrying her to another family when there were more benefits if Cyril was also here. Glaive knew this information could be used by them to monopolize the market. He was also aware that Cyril was blessed even though he was still young, but he was curious where the child got this information. Because of that, he finally used Sophia's plan. After that, a week after the school festival, Foal managed to recover partially by releasing his mana. And because of Foal and Alfortha's performance on stage, their performance won an award. When Cyril was walking in the villa hallway, suddenly Sophia came out of Glaive's office room. Sophia asked about today's beautiful weather, making Cyril puzzled because it was raining today, but he realized his lady was in a good mood. Sophia looked happy because today her negotiation succeeded. After that, she asked Cyril to be her escort. She had also asked permission from Glaive. After that, Sophia asked if Cyril would like Sophia more if she became a queen, a feudal lord, or just an ordinary girl. Cyril was confused by the sudden question, then answered that no matter what, he would follow the path she chose. Sophia thanked him, and she had expected Cyril would answer like that. She would also use it as a reference for her future choices, making Cyril confused. He asked what Sophia was planning, but the girl said it was a secret. A few days later at the royal palace, Sophia paid respect to Theodore and Adele. She thanked them for the invitation. Theodore also welcomed her and looked at her positively. Cyril felt relieved, especially after Sophia had challenged the nobles. When the king asked who her escort was, Cyril introduced himself. Theodore realized it was the butler. Then the queen thanked him for helping Alforth, even asking him to consider her as his own little sister, even though Cyril couldn't possibly do that. Adele also thanked him because Cyril had saved her niece and wouldn't announce it publicly, but she wanted Cyril to know that he had their gratitude. She even offered to use it as a reason to support him, shocking Cyril. After that, Theodore stopped her, then asked them to enjoy their time. Meanwhile, Cyril felt suspicious of the royal family. However, he felt he misheard. Meanwhile, Foal felt happy to meet Sophia there. When Sophia acted formal toward him, Foal asked her not to be formal and asked them to call him Foal. He was very grateful to the two of them because he could catch up on many things he had left behind, including getting something like them. Cyril immediately understood that what he meant was Tristan. He wasn't surprised if he fell in love with her, and the reason he called her she, to differentiate her from Tristan. Foal suddenly talked about a student named Raymond in Cyril's class. He went to their class cafe during the cultural festival and was surprised when he heard Luke was the class representative. But when he asked Luke, he said that Raymond arranged everything. He then asked for Cyril's opinion on Raymond. Cyril explained that Raymond was still young and inexperienced, but he was a good butler and he believed in the future he would serve his master with his abilities. That information made Foal feel he was right about him. Then Foal's father called him. He advised Foal not to go anywhere even though he already felt better. After that, Foal introduced Cyril and Sophia to his father. His father felt very grateful because the two of them were his daughter's saviors and made his daughter able to have a future. Sophia reasoned she did it as a friend. Foal's father felt he still had to thank her and asked her to continue being friends with his daughter. After that, when Sophia and Cyril were outside watching the sunset, Sophia thanked Cyril. Cyril asked if something was wrong. However, Sophia only said she hadn't thanked him properly yet. She thanked him for saving Foal and listening to many of her requests. Without Cyril, she also wouldn't have been able to become friends with Alicia and Alforth. At that moment, Cyril remembered that in the original story, she would be executed alone. That was her and Sophia's fate. It was not an exaggeration to say he had changed it. However, Cyril said whatever Sophia wanted, Cyril would only grant his lady's wishes, no matter what the request was. Then Sophia asked if she requested Cyril to give her his love, would Cyril give it? Cyril asked if Sophia wanted to know the answer, but the girl instead refused. And she asked Cyril to prepare himself and Cyril obeyed that request.